What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Between Two Heads. My name's Jameson, Welbourn. As always, I'm joined by my co-host, Addison, DeMoura. And today we are joined by my very good friends, Adam and Hana from Mission Hill Melts. Adam, Hana, thank you so much for taking the time and coming on the show.
It's a pleasure.
Thanks for having us, dude.
So there is a ton of stuff that I want to dive into with you. If anybody that's watching or listening follows me, you'll probably know that I'm very close with these individuals. We work on a lot of projects together and look forward to working on many more. But before we dive into talking about that, as always, what we like to do is learn more about the people behind the brand and their history. So, Adam, I want to start with you and kind of kick things off. Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in a small town called Hastings in New York. We were like 45 minutes away from the city. So I got the best of like the suburb life and also would be able to like easily get into the city through like the trains and whatnot. So
what was childhood like? Like, was it, what did your parents do for occupations?
So my mom does like, she's a lawyer, but she didn't practice law. She did more like copyright, text, sort of contract law type things. My dad did medical servicing. He worked for Philips Medical, so he would service like ultrasound machines and things like that. So both my parents worked full time, so I would fucking, come home from school and have to entertain myself for a little while and whatnot.
A lot of unsupervised time.
Little bit.
So before we get too far ahead, let me ask, like, when did cannabis become a thing in your consciousness? When did you first become aware of the plant?
I feel like I first knew about weed sometime in like middle school, and it must have just been from like pop culture references, like from like movies I had seen. Like I can't remember anything in specific, but I'd always like known about weed from like the middle school age, and it was always fascinating to me because it was prevalent but illegal and seemed like a good time. So I knew from middle school, I was like, once I get into high school, I'm gonna figure this whole weed thing out, and that's pretty much what happened.
And so what happened in high school? Do you have a memory of your first time?
Yeah. So it was the night before our like freshman year high school orientation, and it was myself and I think it was like 3 or 4 of my buddies, and we had all made the plan that we were gonna collectively throw down and buy an eighth of weed and go to my buddy's house for a sleepover. Because like the way his house was set up, like his bedroom was on the complete opposite end of his parents. His parents went to sleep super early. So
how much was that eighth?
How much was that eighth? Oh, that was like probably like an $80 eighth at the time, at least.
Okay, because I remember.
Yeah, because I was
back in the day, it was.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And homie, like, this is my first time buying weed. I probably didn't even get 3.5 grams. Like, we had no scales or anything. And I just remember that I procured it, obviously. I was the one in charge of securing the goods. And, like, we all showed up. And we're, like, literal children. And none of us had ever smoked before. And we, like, had no concept of seshing at the time. So we like tried to like break it up like doses, like, like, oh, I paid $10. So here's like my $10 worth of like ground up weed. And the options were you could try to smoke, you could try to roll a joint, or you could smoke out of a tinfoil bowl that one of my friends made. So I rolled a joint. I think most of us rolled joints. Maybe 1 or 2 of them tried to smoke out of the tinfoil bowl. But none of us got high that time because we were literal children, didn't understand the concept of like inhaling.
Did your parents smoke weed? Either one of them?
So yeah, unbeknownst to me at the time, my dad was still is a smoker, but I was so worried about getting caught for smoking that I wasn't even like thinking that parents could even smoke weed. So that was like I didn't find that out too a lot later in life.
Yeah, because I know a lot of lawyers that smoke weed, so I wasn't sure.
My mom doesn't really partake. She like takes like low dose pills now that we make her just to help her like sleep. But she's cool with the life, which is more than I can ask for. So
are your parents able to like accurately describe what you do to their friends, or like how would
I would say so.
Yeah,
Your dad's hip.
My dad can definitely. My mom would probably have a little bit harder time, but she can still articulate. Like
Adam's dad is very hip. He knows what's up.
Yeah.
How old is your dad?
He's 60.
I don't know why you're looking at me. I don't know the answer to that.
I think he's 67 or 68.
Sounds all right.
Yeah, because his 65th birthday was in 2019.
And are your parents from New England, or are they from New York as well?
They both grew up in New York. My dad grew up in the Bronx, and I think my mom also grew up in the Bronx, if not somewhere close. So
okay,
New York.
And how long have you been in New England?
So I moved up in 2012 for college. So I went to school in Boston at Northeastern for 5 years. And then I lived there for another, I think, like 4 and change after college, just doing work and whatnot.
In Boston?
Yeah, mostly in Boston. And then I moved out to Framingham for a couple months. Then I moved back to Boston. I was living in Dorchester in the hood. And then moved south of the city to like the Mansfield area, like near where like the Patriots play football for 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my whole family's from Taunton, Southern Mass.
Okay.
Yep. Oh yeah, you know the area then.
I know the area. Definitely.
So was it on immediately after that first time consuming, Adam, or did it take some time?
It took. We were for sure like, because none of us were like, do you get high? And we were like, no, I don't think so. So it was like, all right, we gotta do this again. So I remember another like at least 3 or 4 attempts where it was like homies rolling up joints and smoking, and like we still didn't understand the concept of like breathing in fully, so none of us got high. And then I remember I started watching YouTube videos trying to get like understanding of what was going on. And I came across like how to make like a fucking gravity bong with like, your household items. So I fucking went to my dad's like ratchet set, and I found the ones that have the hole that go all the way through. And that was my bowl piece. And then I just, with, like some scissors and a lighter and a 2-liter, like I made like a ghetto fucking gravity bong. And me and my buddy Max had like it was like a Tuesday afternoon, and we had like Wednesday off for some stupid reason. So we ran back to my place. I threw down my backpack, grabbed my weed backpack that had like, your gravity bong, your lighters, your Axe body spray, your 3 things of Visine, and like gum. We ran to the woods and we started doing the gravity bong. And because there's like, you're breathing straight smoke, like, there's like, it's hard to miss. Like, we just got lit up that time. And we literally smoked weed until we couldn't fucking light the lighter. We were laughing so fucking hard. And it was magical. It was magical. It was 2 fucking like 14-year-old children just cackling in the woods over nothing. It was fantastic.
That's amazing. So, I mean, after that, was it, what came next? Were you, just chasing different flavors, and what were you seeing during high school? Anything notable that stands in your memory?
Yeah. So after the first couple times, I started doing more like YouTube research to try to like learn more about smoking stuff and strains and whatnot. And I came across like one of those videos that's like, like classic like weed strains that like. And, I was that kid who would like text my weed homie at school and be like, hey man, if you can ever get any of these 10 strains, like definitely let me know. And he would laugh at me, obviously, because it's like fucking silly. But one time he got the real sour diesel in like 2008, and he was in my study hall with me, and we like had study hall in the auditorium. So he like came up to the seat in front of me and he was like, yo, dude, I got a gram of sour diesel if you want it. And I'm like, all right, like, let me see it. And he like goes deep into his backpack and pulls out like this 120 bag. And it's like just one perfectly round nug. And it was so fucking loud that when he pulled that shit out in study hall, literally everyone in that auditorium like turned around and like looked right at us. It was the hottest like I've ever felt like at school for the most part. And I was like, all right, dude, I'm gonna pay you for that right now, and I'm gonna pick that up from you after school because I can't carry that shit around with me. I don't have a jar or anything. So that was
sour D's loud.
a good time, dude. It was so loud. It was just straight gasoline. It was fucking ignorant. And our basic routine was that we would fucking do that same deal where we'd run home after school to my crib, drop our bags off, grab the weed bag, and then run back into the woods to go smoke. And that went well until like right before Thanksgiving when my mom thought she was going to do me a favor and clean my closet out and found like every single paraphernalia item you could imagine. And I obviously got grounded to not smoke for a little bit, but
That is
not for long. I was back at it pretty much like in the springtime, I think. I loved it so much, dude. It was so fucking fun.
So I know you are very into the glass scene and side of the culture, and I believe that started at a very early age. Were you already involved in glass and buying glass at that time, or did that come a little bit later?
So yes and no. So like there was I got a lot of my knowledge from YouTube in the early days. I would watch people like the CCC 420, the Weed Report with Dave Warden, Medical Marijuana Boot Camp with Chubbs and Tang, dude. Fucking, I think Gil from Weed Maps used to even have a little strain review type thing. So the CCC 420 was great because they'd have like different things on different days of the week. So they would always do like Full Melt Friday, stuff like that, and they would do.
Sorry, Adam. Addy, what did you have to say there? I saw you were gonna jump in about something.
That Magwedo Travis will be at Legends.
Fire. Oh, excellent. I can't wait.
Awesome.
Dude, that dude is he was in all of the old videos. He's got a crazy glass collection, I think.
He can fucking hit. That dude can take the biggest rips I've ever seen.
I believe it.
Any human being I've ever met.
Wow.
He's a cool dude. But yeah, so I remember like seeing those sweet, like actual like headies on like YouTube and being like, wow. And then I'm a fucking like kid in high school with like, just trying to like not eat enough lunch so I can save my lunch money to buy like a gram for the weekend type shit. So like we'd have to go into the city and go to like St. Mark's to like some sketchy glass shop where they wouldn't care about selling pipes to children. And like, you got, I remember getting a bong from
shout out to those guys.
I know.
Yeah, those are the real
shout
ones.
Out to the enablers. Shout out to all those enablers.
Shout out to those dudes for sure.
Oh my god, I walked in there, literally a child. I was like, yeah, I'm here for a bong. And I knew exactly what I wanted to. And like, he did the class. It's like, oh, it's usually 120, but for you, my friend, best price. I'll give you for 90. And I'm like, wrap it up, my guy.
Gave you a deal too, man.
I know, dude. He really did. He hooked me up.
And so even in those like early days, like you were buying even a lot of these like cheaper import pieces and like testing their function and understanding the difference between them.
Like we definitely started with like your classic like China bowls, but it would be like a very like, you'd go to like one of those head shops and you'd be like, which one is going to be mine? Like, and that was like the cool thing was like everyone had their own, and we were usually like naming our pipes and stuff back then, just like little names just to give them some extra personality since they were pretty like generic China pipes for the most part. But like, out of every batch, you'd find like one pipe that was like, all right, this is actually pretty sweet. Like whoever was making this in a factory actually like knew some skill. Like
those are like spoons or
spoons. I love the Sherlocks. Like I would try to get like cool Sherlocks. I wish I had more pictures of those early glass pipes, but
when did you get your first Hitman? Because you grew up.
I can truly honestly say that I never personally owned a Hitman, but the first time I went out to Cali and spent like the week like dabbing, like like it was like our friend trip and not like a family trip type thing.
Yeah.
We were for sure had a Hitman direct inject rig that we were smoking with the Burns-O-Matic in the Bay Area like all week. It was like, yeah, I'll never forget, dude. This is like farther down the line, obviously, but I can't forget this story. Me and all the homies are staying with my buddy in the Bay Area. He's got all the dab hookups at the time, and like buddy lends us a rig in this huge burn zone. I remember fucking my buddy's driving, I'm sitting shotgun, and I'm heating him up a dab on the fucking highway, and I'm just fucking, we're laughing, having a good time, and I look over, and there's like a Midwestern looking family, and they're just staring at us like shocked. They just see the blowtorch going and like the glass, and they've got no idea. They think we're like freebasing meth on the highway, and like it was such a wild ass fucking drive.
So funny.
That's too funny. I think every dabber has probably had that one or two of those interactions with the uninitiated. In those early days, Adam, did you have any glass artists that you like really enjoyed or followed closely?
There was like the scientific glass, and then there was the like more like art glass. I remember on the art glass side, I watched the Vela G glass showcase on the CCC 420, and I was like, I fucking love this shit. Like the line work was super cool. Like he does like lip wrap sort of stuff. And they had a really beautiful like selection of his stuff. Like they had a couple of homies all like throw their stuff together. She's hella dirty now, but so I just remember seeing that, and I was like, dude, these pieces are like so beautiful and like delicate, and like these were times where we were throwing bongs and backpacks and like hoping for the best. And I knew that like I couldn't get one now, but at some point when I had like a sesh table and could, a Pelican, like I'd want to get one of those. So Vela G was always on my mind. Nate Myers from the early days, because I remember seeing him, because he would do sort of like collabs with like Sovereignty, so you'd see them cross over with like the scientific people.
Adam's not flexing, but he was a mod in the Nate Myers Facebook group.
Yeah,
I was trying to pull it out of him.
That's later down the line. Yeah, that was in the glory days, dude. That was more in my college years. But yeah, I was blessed to help out on the Facebook group for a while. It's still up there. It's pretty dead. I don't think anybody uses Facebook anymore. But before Instagram really became the like end all be all of like class and the culture, like there was really strong Facebook groups, and it was cool. Like, you could find your specific artists, or if you had like styles, like there was like a whole space glass group that was like Nate and Joe Lex and Sagan and stuff like that. But I really liked the Nate group because everyone was so fucking friendly, and like a lot of other groups were just pretentious, and you'd get like lots of like people shitting on each other, and like, and the Nate group was just very inclusive. Like even if you only had like a slide or like a marble, everyone was like super nice. So I was stoked on that, dude, and that was nice too because I met a lot of people. Even before I was a mod, I met a lot of people through that Facebook group. Because you just end up you see the same couple names pop up, and you start figuring out like who people are and like what kind of rigs they got, and eventually like maybe like where they live, or when people were traveling back in the day, you sort of like hit up your groups and see if anybody would want to like link up and sesh. So I met tons of people through glass, dude. It's so crazy.
Let's talk about college. I mean, let's
Yeah, I mean, shit, because that's really, high school was cool, and like I definitely smoked lots of weed, but yeah, college was definitely where I just got way more experience. I remember the original goal going to school was like, I got to find a homie from Cali who's got connections out there, so we can just start getting good weed and concentrates, like, because that was always the goal, and like I couldn't really get concentrates. I started getting it sporadically in like 2012, like here and there, and when we could get it shipped in from our homie. But late 2012, early 2013 was when we really like made that transition from smoking mostly flower and concentrate when we could to really just trying to focus on getting slabs or
you need to You need to tell these kids. There was a point in time where no amount of money.
Oh man. Okay, I will say one thing. So the first time I went to go buy dabs was an ordeal, dude. So I'm in New York. My buddy Max, shouts out to my man Griffo. I hope he's out there. My man's like, yo, I found some kids on Instagram. They live in fucking Greenwich, Connecticut, which is like the richest part of Connecticut. They've got 710 Labs and Native Roots packaged grams, and they're down to sell some to us for an ungodly amount of money. I think it might have been like $100 a gram type shit. Like, it was expensive. At least 80 a gram for trim BHO. So, you know, we're antsy and we're just like, fuck it, let's just drive out there and like hope that like he hits us up like on the earlier side of when he said. And he's like literally like out to dinner with his family, and we're like just hanging out, like waiting for him to finish up so he can come sell us our like 6 grams of oil we can go smoke. And it took so long. We paid so much money, but that was what you had to do for content. And it was like he was doing us a favor. Like, he didn't need to sell us those like handful of grams at the time. Like, he was fine just smoking that stuff. But yeah, it was not great, but it was, you know, just being able to take dabs was so fantastic.
People don't know. Kids don't know. They're spoiled these days. I mean,
it was tough.
It was hard.
That's a lucky time. I mean, there was lots of times after that where, I mean, we smoked those grams so quickly, bro, and then you'd be out, and then you'd hit up everyone you knew, and no one. Your regular weed guys would never have it. You know, you'd have to have like a connoisseur homie who maybe could get you hooked up. Dude, I remember, I'm going to put my homie on blast. My man, Jack, you know, my man, Jack comes out there, dude. This guy would tell us, oh yeah, man, I'm out of oil. Like, you know, can't sesh. And then I went over one night because I got some oil. So I brought some stuff to sesh. And then this motherfucker opens a fucking box in his room and he had fucking oil. And I was like, motherfucker, I thought you said you were out. And he's like, oh, well, you know, you gotta make sure you got enough for yourself first. And I'm like, damn,
oh my God.
Damn, dog, you greedy. We're out here starving. You're up in your castle like a dragon.
You're learning how it really works. You know?
Dude, oh man, I never felt more betrayed. I was like, bro, there were times where I would have done anything for a dab, and you were just sitting on a couple grams, like. Betrayal, dude.
Too funny.
So what you know, how did that progress as university went on? You know, you established your connections. I know at some point I think you went out to California and spent some time out there.
So I did sort of 2 separate trips. So that freshman year, literally the first homie I met at orientation, my buddy Ben, from NorCal, from the San Francisco Bay Area, you know, him and all of his buddies had med cards and did the club thing. So we were getting stuff for one of his buddies for like, you know, the whole year. And then I think it was spring break. He invited like myself and like 3 other friends to come and crash at his, you know, parents' place and just like go see California. Cause you know, I'd never been to the Bay Area, at least. That was my first time out there. And we'd made some arrangements to sort of pick up like some good quantities of concentrate from some of his local homies at the time. So that was the first trip where I was like, wow, like smoked pretty much straight oil for a week, was hooked immediately. And then a few years later, I got an internship in LA because Northeastern does like one of these things where you have to do like 2 or 3 6-month internships as part of your like degree program. So I got a job in LA in a restaurant because I was at the time I was still thinking I wanted to do restaurant management type stuff, and took that job, paid absolute dirt, but I really just wanted to go be in LA and get my med card and like have my own sort of like weed experiences and do the clubs and events and just try to smoke as much as I could. So,
and what was that like?
Oh man, it was the most blessed experience. Definitely like changed my life those 6 months. It was like a beautiful combination of, you know, I went out during the winter time, so I'm at the
What
beach,
year was it?
Sun, when my homies are literally getting 3 feet of snow.
What year was this?
That was January to July 2015.
Okay. Yeah.
So beautiful California winter, dude. Like I landed, my brother lived in LA. So I stayed with him for like a week or two before like my like temporary housing was available. First thing I did, I spent 5 hours in line at the LA DMV, got a California state ID card, and then I went right after that to the fucking weed doctor and I got my fucking MMJ card, went back to my brother's house, and I was like, hey, is it cool if I order some weed to get delivered here? And my brother was like, yeah, like, of course. Like, and I fucking did it. We got the, that makes my hair okay, good stuff. But I ordered some like okay weed, and then I went down to Venice Medical Center, I think, the next day and got some Banff and like hardcore OG from the West Coast Cure dudes. And then a couple of days later, I made my pilgrimage to TLC, and they wouldn't let me in with my temporary ID. I was hella pissed. I took a 30-minute Uber, and they wouldn't let me inside.
Fuck.
What do we got? Anything good?
Banana bro?
Yeah, that's one of those.
Did you?
But then after once my ID came in, dude, it was like off to the races. Because I'd been like watching all these videos, and I'm listening to where my people are going, and like the brands that I've been seeing in strain reviews are going to be available and shit. So I went to a lot of dispos. The places that I ended up going to the most were TLC, because the oil refinery co. was hitting back in the day. Venice Medical Center, AHS in West Hollywood for the bougie shit, the weed in Studio City, usually for solventless and the bougie shit. And then there were a couple other small dispensaries here and there that people would do like really micro drops at, but those places always had a nice variety. All the big homies would always drop their stuff there. So
yeah, Oz always had good hash.
Dude, yeah, they really did. I remember going there one time and I got I think I got third gen stuff, Matt Rise stuff, and I got this one strain called Pink Champagne from Natural Dabs. It was, dude, I hope someone still has that or like has like crosses of it, because it tasted like wine. It tasted like red fucking wine. Like it was unbelievable. As straight water hash, and it was beautiful water hash. It was air dried, like it was crazy. But
yeah, they had a lot of good hash at Oz. Jason Beck was the owner.
Yeah,
I think he still owns it actually, and they do still have like a crazy selection of hash.
I loved going there. It was so small. There was this one crazy old lady who's usually the bud tender, and she was on it, dude. She remembered people and knew what they wanted. She knew what I was there for, like. Always the hash and the expensive live resin, pretty much.
Yeah, that was a good spot.
What were some of the strains that impacted you on that trip? Other than the Pink Champagne.
Oh well, I mean, fucking, I could only afford 2 grams of the third gen family moonshine melts. I got a gram of the OZ Kush and a gram of straight Skittles, and it literally turned into a puddle from my like drive from Koreatown to West Hollywood. Like it was so greasy. It was unbelievable. There was nothing else like that I'd smoked at the time. And the Skittles terps were just so loud, dude. Just like coat of your mouth and like those candy terps. So that was a big one. That Pink Champagne was big. I think it was like orange cookies from TLC at the time was the one that I was always hoping to grab in concentrate form. Hardcore OG was the king of the crop at the time. That was like some of the best OG terps. What else was there? I got some Sour D from Matt Rise. That was pretty good back in the day. I got OG Kush from Full Flavor that I remember was super tasty.
So we wrap up in Cali in that internship.
Yeah.
Come back to Boston for school. What
sad times?
What? Yeah. Where are you at? What?
Dude, I was literally spoiled just going to clubs and events and meeting people out in Cali. And then I came back to Massachusetts, and all those luxuries quickly just were gone. And my couple of homies who told me they'd be down to ship me stuff back out got cold feet pretty quickly. So, you know, I had my weed plugs in the area, and my buddy Brett at 207 Farms, who actually lived above me at the time, he would bring down tons of flour from Maine and just sell it to the college kids. And he was a G, so he'd let me know when he was coming back with flour, and he'd let me come up and sort of check everything out. And if I thought anything would do well, he'd let me pinch like a nug or two off and go squish it in the living room with him.
He lived upstairs?
He was directly above me, literally the exact same unit, just one floor up. And I met him because he literally just knocked on our door with a joint, and his two roommates and me and my roommate were eating dinner, and we were like, "Oh, you smoke? We smoke. Like we're gonna finish dinner, then we'll all smoke." But yeah, so he would come through and he would let me squish flour, and if anything yielded well, then I could buy like a zip of that and make a little bit of money. Because I started squishing in Cali.
To rewind, do we have a video of you in university hitting red hot nails?
Let me see. Oh, you know what? So I'm gonna pull up one. I gotta pull up two videos. I've got both of them. One of them I just realized didn't upload. I'm gonna pull it up.
But
real
yes,
quick.
we do have that footage.
So yeah, if you can believe it, yeah, I do. My buddy has. He sent me this somewhat recently too, which is actually hilarious.
It's amazing how much old like cannabis related content from Adam's life he has.
And I've lost a lot of stuff. Like I had all of my high school stuff, like, you know, because we documented that shit. We thought that shit was fucking
hilarious. Me
hilarious.
away. He has so much documentation of his whole journey, and I'm like not a person who has tons of pictures.
I love when Instagram came out in high school, dude. Because everyone had Facebook, and like you had to keep that kind of PG-13 because like
everyone's mom,
college and your family and shit. But then Instagram came out and it's like, oh, like we can kind of do whatever the fuck we want over here, which is kind of sweet. And took that to our advantage. So let me see if that video uploaded.
Let me know if you want me to pull that screen up.
Yeah. So I'm gonna pull up one video real quick because this is history. This is the first melt dab I took, which was not too far after. The timestamp is telling me December 23rd, 2014. My buddy actually came back from Colorado with some trichome heavy extracts, the melts.
Wow.
Chem Diesel sister, fresh frozen, hand trimmed. So not even the premium stuff, but she was pretty greasy for the time.
Flagged up.
Smoked it in my buddy's dirty ass basement.
The hive, and the hive nail.
Yeah, dude. Oh my goodness. But we were stoked. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that most of this video is terrible, but
Just your face.
just my face. Yeah, Griffo was
Cheekage.
literally, I didn't even know he was taking a video of, but it was some good half melt. I was
oh my gosh.
I was pretty
so
dude.
funny.
It's such a fucking dirty basement. Such college years. Let me see if my other video came up yet.
You probably have to
The
put
other
out-
video is
You have to
great.
put out of iPhoto and then pop back into it.
Oh yeah.
But we can keep rolling if we can't find it. But yeah, so like
That was a nice flag. That was beautiful.
Dude, it wasn't bad. I mean, I was lucky too, because like, you know, all of my homies were like myself and like the weed smoking connoisseurs. So I had a homie who went to Boulder because he knew that he wanted to do weed stuff. So he was really the homie who we'd always be really excited when he would come back from breaks, because he would always bring some rosin or hash or, you know, BHO back in the day, but always good stuff. That's my boy Danny. And
Nice. What about cultivation? Were you guys at all there? I know you probably were in tight quarters with being in university. Was that?
I didn't grow during college at all. My boy Brett, who I talked about earlier, he grew upstairs, so I would help him out a little bit. And like, you know, when harvest time would come and like trimming and stuff, I'd help him out. But I didn't really start growing until after college, until I moved out. Less roommates, more space for weed plants type shit. But we started small. I never really grew too much. I think when we moved out to Framingham, we started with like a 4x4 10, just mostly fucking around. Because I was also still working in restaurants at the time. I worked in kitchens until probably like 2018 almost.
I think so.
So I was still, I was still like part-time in the kitchen and then doing the weed stuff. So I was mostly focusing on trying to get the rosin stuff down.
So would it be safe to say then, Adam, that the catalyst for the inception of Mission Hill was Phil posting that video?
Yeah, for sure.
You seeing that video from Soil Grown?
Yeah, me and my buddy Brett were big like hash church people. So what I saw people posting about it on Instagram, and I really thought it was a hoax. I thought people were putting like little balls of BHO in nugs and then squishing it, and like I didn't think it was real. It's like one of those things where you tell that to somebody at the time, and you're like, no, that's fucking crazy. And I remember I had a little bit of water hash. I didn't have screens because like that wasn't a thing yet, but I made it into a little ball and I squished it on parchment with a hair straightener, and I saw that it separated out. I saw that you could see the like particulate, and then you could see the clear sap. And then I did it with flour, and the same sort of shit happened. I quickly realized that like the quality of your flour and the freshness, like the moisture content, all of that was pretty important. You could have good looking weed, but if it was old and like heavily machine trimmed and like low moisture, like you go to squish that shit and like nothing would come out. So Mission Hill Melts was born out of necessity because I didn't have fucking shit to smoke on Mission Hill, so I had to make some melts, even though it wasn't really melts. But I was really inspired by the moonshine melts guys. I like they had the best hash smoking, period. And I just liked the way it sounded. So I sort of, was like, all right, well, I'm on Mission Hill and I'm, the end goal is melts. So that's sort of where the name came from.
That's awesome. That's really cool. So I want to pause there and I want to kind of pivot over to Hana and learn a little bit about you. Hana, I know from just getting to hang out with you, you had a way different upbringing than Adam. You grew up in Indiana.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about, your early days, your childhood, and what it was like growing up there?
Absolutely. So yeah, I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up in Indiana, and I had a pretty sheltered upbringing. I grew up in a not conservative, but like a somewhat conservative Muslim family. So I grew up with like pretty religious and cultural like values being like strongly implemented in my life at all times. So my family was always very, don't do drugs. If you do drugs, you're gonna get addicted and you're gonna die. Like you're gonna be a piece of shit human and you're gonna die, basically. So my family was very like reefer madness propaganda, I guess, if you wanna liken it to something. They were always very discouraging of stuff like that. So I had always been kind of aware of cannabis because I have a cousin who I refer to as the other black sheep of the family. And he was like eavesdropping on my sister. I have a sister. She's 10 years older than me. And I used to eavesdrop on her all the time. It was just the two of us. And she was gossiping with one of my other cousins about how one of our cousins always stinks of patchouli, and it's because he's trying to cover up blah, 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 blah smells, and he's such a fucking hippie, and like all of this stuff. My sister's really square. So I'd always been kind of aware that I have this like specific cousin who's the black sheep, and he like smokes weed and smells like patchouli. And so I always kind of had a feeling that I would follow in his footsteps because he was the cousin that I was always closest to. He was the cousin I always gravitated towards. We have a very large, I think we have like a 16 or 17 year age gap. We have a very large age gap, but we're very close. So I always had a feeling that I'd kind of go in his direction. So I was always aware of cannabis, but my family was very anti-cannabis. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. She was a homemaker. She took care of us. And my dad was a doctor. And so they were, I was raised very square. I hear a lot of like Adam's experiences and stories that he tells about his childhood and his youth. And I'm like, wow, that's crazy. I can't imagine stuff like that.
Yeah, we got down. We ran from police and shit. It was a good time.
Can't imagine stuff like that because I was like a goody two shoes. I was the teacher's pet. That was me. Super annoying.
That's awesome. So, I mean, when do you remember a moment when you became aware of cannabis? Like, I know you talked about your cousin and overhearing sort of the he smells like patchouli, but was there a point in your childhood where you became aware that there was this drug called cannabis and you could smoke it, and what was that like?
So that same cousin used to come to visit all the time. So he came to visit when I was in high school. I think it was a freshman in high school, and he was driving me somewhere and he dropped a joint in the car. Like he had a joint in his pocket and it fell out of his pocket and like into the crack. And so that was like basically it, because I saw it fall out of his pocket and onto the floor. And then he was like, cool, we have to stop. Because also we're in Indiana where everything is like very, very, very illegal, and you'll just like go to jail for fucking forever, especially because like we're brown, so they'll just like add something else onto it and then just like lock you up for the rest of your life. It's like not a great place. So he like pulled over into like the grocery store parking lot and like hopped out of the car. He's like pushing the seat all the way back, like looking all over the floor. So that was like it for me. And then I obviously knew that I had like classmates and stuff who were partying and stuff like that, but my dad was not well when I kind of like hit driving age, and so like your independence age or whatever. So I was not going out and partying. I did not really have friends. I was not like super social, so I wasn't really partaking in any of that kind of stuff. When was your first experience with cannabis? My first experience with cannabis was I had an edible on accident in high school. So that was like a really terrible experience where I ate a brownie. It was not on purpose. I was like in like a shadow of grief. So I was just kind of like acting and not really like cognizant of what I was doing. I like ate a brownie, a huge brownie, and then I drank a glass of milk, and then I went to sleep and I woke up and I didn't know what the fuck was going on. It was like, for someone who's never had cannabis before, to like eat an edible, not knowing that you're eating an edible, go to sleep, wake up. It's like it's almost like a psychoactive experience. It's real weird.
I feel like not too many people's first experiences with edibles either. I feel like edibles as a first time experience is particularly strange. I wouldn't. It's not. Edibles, I feel like will rock you like in weird ways.
It was not a great time. It was not a great time. I was like kind of with some distant family, so it was a little bit awkward. And then they made me like go out, and then we saw other people we knew, and I was like fucked up and didn't know what was going on. So I was not having not great. So that was my first technical cannabis experience. So it was an edible in high school, but the first time I smoked weed was in college. Freshman year of college.
And was that a pleasurable experience?
Yeah, it was great. I vividly remember that. So I sold for a semester before I ever smoked. And then I vividly remember the first time I smoked. I laughed so hard that I was in physical pain. And I couldn't tell you what we were laughing about, but I was with a couple of people that I'm actually still in touch with, surprisingly. But I was with a couple of friends, and we were all sitting around the table. There were a bunch of dogs everywhere. I think there were like 5 dogs in the house at the time. And like, I love animals. So we were having a great time. I just remember laughing so hard that I was in literal stitches. Like, I was in pain. And I woke up the next morning and my abdomen was in pain. So hard. It was magical. It was magical.
Definitely.
Smoking joints. We were just rolling up joints and passing them around.
I miss
really
the giggles, dude. I wish we could all get the giggles.
Oh
back.
my god. Yeah,
You
the
just
giggles
start
are
smoking
great.
too much weed, the giggles are gone.
So after so you went away to college for that first year, and then
Yeah.
you actually had to come home.
I did. I moved home to help my mom take care of my dad. So my dad had a rare form of dementia. It's called frontotemporal dementia. So there's not a lot of it's not super common. There's not a ton of reported cases. And my dad had a very advanced case. It was something that progressed really fast. So when he was initially diagnosed, his prognosis was that he would be functioning and probably be able to continue practicing for a good 5 to 7 years. And then he'd have to like wind down and retire, and he'd have like kind of a slow decline from there. But my dad was diagnosed and passed away within 4.5 years. So 4 years, within 4 years. So his case was very fast. So I left for my freshman year of college in fall of 2012. And my sister got married Labor Day weekend of 2012. So I remember coming home from my sister's wedding, and I could see on my dad's face that he didn't fully recognize me when I showed up. And so that's kind of when I knew that I probably wasn't going to be away for very long. So I actually came home early from that second semester. I like took all of my exams early and came home. So I moved home from Ohio back to Indiana. Both places where cannabis is big no-no. So I moved back home into my mom's house to help my mom take care of my dad. His condition was such that like there's no assisted living facilities or anything like that that's really qualified to handle something like that. So the only thing that you can really do is just like take care of the person you love at home. So that's what we did. And that really sparked like my love and my interest in cannabis, because my same black sheep cousin would come and visit, and he would say stuff like, I wish our family wasn't so anti-cannabis because it could help him. And I just remember him saying that over and over again to me, and I never really understood it. So it really lit a fire in me to kind of try to understand more.
And so, when did that happen? Was it after your dad's passing that you started to explore more, or how did that evolve?
Yeah, so I between coming home and then my dad passing away, my mom and I got into some conflict. I was out of the house one day, and my sister was like, I think she's doing drugs, because I was like rebellious or whatever. So my sister came home, and my sister and my mom tore apart my room, and they like found a bunch of weed in my room. So they got super upset. My mom kicked me out of the house. So for about 4.5 months, my mom like took care of my dad totally on her own without me, because she didn't want to look at my face because she thought I was like a dirty drug addict. So I lived away from home, and that's kind of when I really started to try to learn more, just because I wasn't restricted by being at home and not being able to partake or consume or whatever. Because when I say I was at home all the time. I wasn't going out. I wasn't doing stuff. I was at home with my mom and my dad all the time. My dad needed full time.
Where did you go when you left
When my mom kicked me out? So my mom did this hilarious thing where she gave me a carry-on bag, and she stood over me like this while I packed the bag, and I'd put something in the bag, and she'd pull it out, and she'd be like, your dad and I paid for that. You're not taking that. So she watched me pack a bag of clothes. Oh yeah, it was hardcore. She watched me pack a bag of clothes, And where I lived in Indiana was a college town. There was a college campus, Ball State University. And she was like, "You seem to have so many friends. Figure it out." And she dropped me off on the corner of campus. It was literally snowing. It was December. She dropped me off on the corner of campus with my carry-on bag. And she was like, "Figure it out." Figured it out. I called this girl that I went to high school with, and she was a year older than me. I had remembered in my brain that at one point during high school, she got in a fight with her mom, and she like left home for like a week. So I called her and I was like, hypothetically, if my mom kicked me out of the house and it's snowing outside and I had nowhere to go, what would I do? And bless her heart, shout out to Linda Sherfick. She was like, "Oh, my grandma bought me a ticket to like go to France for a month for vacation, so I'm not going to be at my house if you want to stay at my house." And she let me stay at her house. So I stayed at her house for like 2 weeks, and then I found a place to I like took over someone's sublease on campus. Basically, I like figured it out. But my mom basically dropped me off. She's like, "Figure that shit out." Builds character.
Yeah.
You know? So it builds character.
Sink or swim, for sure.
Yeah, pretty much. And I mean, seriously, it builds character. I had like no idea what I was going to do. Everyone in my family was mad. No one would speak to me. It was I had to figure it the fuck out. And it built a ton of character because sometimes in life you just got to figure stuff the fuck out, and it's helpful to be
Always.
like, if you can just get like dropped off on the side of the road and be told to figure it out, you can probably figure out whatever's on your plate in front of you. So builds character. I'm like not mad about it at all. I have like no ill will. I love my mom. She's my homie. We're friends. It's great. So it's totally.
So you eventually moved home before
I did.
Okay.
I did. We patched stuff up and I moved home. My dad passed away in October of 2014, and like 3 or 4 days after my dad passed away, my mom was like, "You should start thinking about what stuff you want to take with you and what stuff you don't want to take with you because we're leaving." I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about. I have plans to leave here and go here. Maybe you're going there, but I'm not going there." I had plans to move to Chicago. I had accepted a job offer, was getting ready to move. My mom was like, "No, I need you. I'm moving to Massachusetts and you are coming with me." And that's what happened. So Christmas of 2014. Yeah. She was like, "I need your support. Your sister is pregnant and married. Like she has her own life. What are you doing? You're going to support me. I need your support. Your dad just died." It's like, "Cool, I'll support you." So we moved to Massachusetts, and that's how I ended up on the East Coast.
Wow.
Yep.
And so what was your first move once you got out here? Like, did you know anybody? What was your
what did support mean?
What does support from my mom
What did
mean?
that mean? Yeah.
I think support from my mom meant like, so my mom and my dad got married. I think my mom was 17 when my mom and my dad got married. They were kids. And they got married in India, and they, immigrated to like the classic immigrant success story. Like they moved to America. They had like no furniture in their apartment. When my dad landed in America from India, he like got off of the plane and it was fucking snowing, and my dad didn't have a winter coat. He like didn't even have a coat. So they had one beanbag in their apartment, and that was like their only piece of furniture. And my parents would rough it. My mom would make rotis, like very thin round bread, and they would live off of like a few rotis and like a can of corn or a can of beans for the whole week. Like they'd stretch that shit out for days, and they roughed it for a really long time. So my mom did not know an adult life without my dad. She didn't know a life without my dad, an adult life without some sort of companionship. And I think that the idea of just being alone was like more than she could bear. So I think she just needed a body, you know? I think she just needed someone. So, you know, my sister was occupied. She was expecting her first child. My sister's a doctor, so she was working. So kind of the only option was that I go and support my mom. I was like not gonna let her sink, you know? So
100%.
yeah.
So, you know, what was your first occupation or move when you got to the city? I mean, you were probably looking to get employment and meet some people. Yep. How did that look?
My employment, both of my jobs that I had in my time in Massachusetts pre like coronavirus and pre Mission Hill melts and all of that stuff were really stressful. So I worked in like kind of corporate office financy type roles, and it was exhausting. It was really exhausting. So the first of my two jobs, I worked in finance for a psychiatrist. He owned like a large practice. He had multiple people working under him, and I like managed all of his accounts receivables and all of that stuff. And then I basically did the same thing for like a huge orthodontic company a couple years later. Super stressful all the time. So my like cannabis intake was like up all the time.
All the way
up. Dude, I specifically remember I had a hater at my job at the orthodontic company, and my hater went to my boss and was like, I think you should fire her. She smokes weed on her lunch breaks.
Narc.
I would go sit in my car in the parking lot at work, and I would dab in my car in the parking lot at work. There are cameras. I didn't give a shit.
So are you into the culture at this point? Like, are you aware of Mission Hill melts?
Yeah, so I was getting cussed on Mission Hill melts. I was getting
not from me.
Not from him. Not from him. But I was getting cussed. I remember Mission Hill melts when Mission Hill melts was flour rosin. I remember flour rosin in paper coin envelopes. I'm
gonna pull some old
pictures. Pull it up.
I'd been smoking Mission Hill melts for a long time, and I was paying custy prices for a long time.
Played.
For sure, dude. For sure.
So you're getting involved in the culture. You're developing some type of friend group. You were working
I had met a couple people who like worked in cannabis or were growing weed or whatever. And I was going to the Freedom Rally every single year. And so the Freedom Rally is where I originally interacted with Adam and stuff. Yeah, so the first time Adam and I met was at the Freedom Rally in 2017. The Freedom Rally is like the Black Friday for trappers. It's like 1 million people in, and it's a fucking blur.
What are we looking at here? This is the original.
Yeah, if you ever got Mission Hill melts like this, you're a real OG. I also am gonna flex. This is literally how the beginning flour rosin was done, 0.5 gram at a time. This is pineapple. I remember this one specifically. This is like one of the better flour rosins we ever did. This is the Frankenstein press that I was using before the H frames were popping, before people were making plate kits and whatnot. This monstrosity got some good mileage done.
Yeah. So Hana, you were working in finance.
Yes.
You were following the culture. You were kind of connecting through Boston Freedom Rally. Were your friends weed people at that point, or were you still kind of trying to figure out, what was that? How was that?
Yeah, so I didn't really have a huge friends group in Massachusetts. When I moved up, I had like a very funny thing where I have family in the area. So my family lives in Boylston. So my aunt has lived in that community and been active in that community for probably like almost 40 years now at this point. So I moved to Massachusetts, and she set me up on like a blind friends date with a couple of like other young girls from the Muslim community, basically. She was like, here, these are the kinds of friends that you should be friends with. These nice girls who go to the mosque. Be friends with these girls. So she set me up on like this funny like blind date with these girls. So we sat down, dude, this is actually really funny. We sat down at Buffalo Wild Wings because Buffalo Wild Wings was like down the street from my house. We sat down at Buffalo Wild Wings and I was there with 3 different girls. And one of the girls looked straight at me and she was like, do you care if I order a beer? And I was like, no, I actually don't mind at all. Go ahead. And I think that was more or less like a, how haram are you?
Yeah.
Like, I'm testing the waters. Like, how religious are you? Like, I'm gonna order a beer.
Like, I'll show you. I'll show you where we'll take this. That's
pretty much. And it was really funny. The whole evening was just like kind of like a one-upping of stories of like I'm actually not that square. I'm actually like not that religious. I know your aunt set me up on this like date with you, but we're not like that. This is gonna go
funny.
well.
That's awesome.
It's really funny. And so like when I was like, does anyone have a good plug for me? Because I need stuff that I can't, So anyone? And Rihanna, dude.
Of course.
Yeah,
got the plug. You got the plug from the church from that's so
from the masjid group. Yeah, I sure did, dude. It's
Down
really
with the Muslims. See?
yeah. So one of my dude and the kid who I was picking up from, you also met him, McTasty.
Yep.
You remember Mo?
Yeah.
So it's really funny. So my aunt basically like we moved here. And I was on like my family thought I was on this like rebellious track of bad behavior. So we moved to Massachusetts and we were close to family and they were like, oh, we're going to push you to be friends with this like group of people who's going to set you on the straight path. You do that. You do that. So I am still friends with all of those people. Like,
amazing.
It's really great because like those are also my Muslim community friends, but they're also like my fun friends. It's pretty good. Cool. So luckily I was like, I found my supply through them for the most part. And I was lucky to have that. So I was mostly hanging out with people who were either cannabis industry or cannabis adjacent at that point.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So after you sort of decided that the finance administrative support world wasn't for you, you like Adam also pursued a role in the culinary world.
I did.
Talk a bit about that?
Yeah, I kind of always wanted to go into the food industry. I always wanted to do pastry. I remember as a kid telling people that I was going to be a dentist and then I was going to open a bakery next to my dentist office and I was going to give people cavities and then I was going to fix them. And that was my master plan. So that's what I used to tell people when I was a kid. And then that evolved to, I just want to have a bakery. So I went to pastry school. I basically got really burnt out at my job. I applied to pastry school as a joke. I didn't think it was going to happen or that I would get in or whatever the case may be. I applied to like a very specific program within pastry school. And it's like, it was really weird. You had to submit, oh, careful. You had to submit like a very long personal statement about why you wanted to pursue this program and all of this stuff. And I got into the program and they were like, here, we'll pay for it all. So then I was like, cool, I hate my job. So that sounds great to me. So I was working part-time. I'd come into the office like 3 times a week and I'd work. And I do a little bit of work remotely, but I went to pastry school and it was a shit ton of fun. It was really, really fun.
Cool.
Yeah.
It's incredible how many people who are involved in Hash have culinary
So many.
Whether
So
it's professional or unprofessional. They're like, oh yeah, no, I love to cook. I make really, or yeah, I actually was a chef, or I worked in the kitchen, or I was a pastry artist, or whatever it was. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
So how did you and Adam met in a very crazy fucking time? I
We
think
did.
it's a very cool story. So how did that actually work out? Because you were aware of Adam far longer than Adam was aware of you.
If you can believe it.
So we originally met in 2017 Freedom Rally.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was. So we met in 2017, and I liked him, and he didn't remember me, which is fine. It's fine. Busy day. It's fine. I get it. I'm not upset about it at all. I promise.
Very busy.
And then we saw each other again in 2019 at the Freedom Rally. So that was
also very busy, but I
also very
remembered.
busy. But I spent a lot more money that time, so I think he remembered me that time.
That's what it takes.
It works. But yeah, we started talking after that. And then I think we started like actually hanging out, just the two of us, right before quarantine popped off. Right?
Yeah.
It was just before quarantine popped off. And then COVID happened, and my mom has health issues, and she was on like a chemotherapeutic medication at the time, so she had no immune system basically. She was like, "You're not leaving the house to see random people when there's like undisclosed crazy pandemic virus going on outside. You're not coming in and out of the house. That's not a thing that happened." I had my own apartment in Providence at the time still from pastry school. So I was like, cool, I'll just leave then. And so I left, and then called Adam, and I was like, cool, I'm coming over. And I showed up with like a bunch of bags and a laundry basket full of clothes and a bunch of shit. And I was like, trial by fire, let's do this. Still here. World's longest third date.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, man, Adam, how was that?
It was great. Blessed timing, dude. Because honestly, like, I don't know what I would have done during the pandemic otherwise. Granted, like, you know, I had Bruno, and he's great company, but you can't really talk to Bruno because he's a dog, obviously.
It definitely doesn't stop you, though.
It was like, and I had been on a particularly long, like, dry streak. I had not dated anybody for a long period of time, dude. It was a very much like a blessed occurrence. What Hana like didn't mention in her story is that when we met in person, but then I sort of reached back out, and I sort of remember it, but I didn't know 100%. And I'm not gonna lie, I'll say it here. I slid into the DMs. The one and only time I ever did, I slid into the DMs, and it worked out. So
he shot a shot semi-blind too. I like made art for his ex-partner, and it was posted on my art page. And he like, it was Mission Hill. It was like the Mission Hill Melts logo. I made it like hand stitched embroidery. So he saw it, and so he shot a shot blind on my art.
Yeah, just because I like the art.
Lots of butts on that art
And
page, if we're being real.
It worked out. So.
So
Okay.
I wanted. So what was your first job at?
Yes.
Michigan?
Oh my
Dude,
God,
it was
dude.
not glamorous. I started from the bottom. My first job.
We were incredibly busy. Like
It was
the
slammed.
pandemic didn't slow us down at all. Like most people, it probably made us even busier.
It was slammed. It was nonstop. It was crazy. My first job at Mission Hill Melt. So we made hash in a detached garage. So the house like kind of sat up on a little slope, and then the detached garage was down here. And there's no like running water or drainage in this detached garage. So to fill the res, to like drain all of the wash water, you're snaking shit up from the house into the garage.
Yeah. So we would have our filter underneath our kitchen sink connected to like 100 feet of 1/4-inch tubing, and I'd run that into our cold room in the garage that had a 100-gal res with a float valve on it. So that would take like, you know, a good couple hours for that thing to fill up.
That was my first job, is running that line out from the kitchen into the garage.
And then after a wash day, we would have like 100-gallon, basically like feed trough from like Tractor Supply, and we would dump the water in there, and then at night we'd have a sump pump. We'd put in, and we'd pump all the water out. We tried pumping the water
and up into our kitchen sink.
Yeah.
So that was my other first job at Mission Hill Melts, was pulling that hose from our detached garage up and into our kitchen sink, like into the drain. So we would at times be pumping GMO water into our kitchen.
Loud terps, loud, funky hash water.
I love GMO. One of my favorite things of all time. Like rank GMO water down your kitchen sink is a horrible smell. It's a horrible smell.
Yeah, it was
and
not nice.
There's few things on earth that can cover that smell.
Hash water gets really funky really quick for anybody who's never dealt with hash water. So that was not fun. We tried dumping it on our front lawn, and we quickly found that if it was warm out, dude, it would basically just like aromatize any water soluble terps, and yeah, our lawn banged like straight fucking loud.
Yeah.
How after the months settled out and the systems improved, and I don't think you're in the same setup as you were at that point. Where do the roles fall? Like what roles do you occupy, Adam, and how does the division of labor work now?
Well, so Adam was really busy at the time. He was doing work in Massachusetts, and then he had the facility job in Rhode Island. And we were in the works for starting to figure up like a venture up in Maine. So Adam was doing a ton of work, and he was really tired all the time and really stressed out. And sometimes when he's really tired and he's really stressed out, he's real grumpy, and I don't love it. So it got to a point where I just couldn't take the grumpy anymore. And I was like, how about you teach me to do some of this so I can take it off of your plate so that you're less grumpy and everybody's life is better. So he taught me how to squish. And then I was like, oh, I really like this. This is my job now. No one's taking this away from me. So I basically commandeered that role.
And so you, like, other than the squishing, like, I know, Hana, you work a lot on like the marketing, and you guys have like a really, really strong brand presence in the clothing line. Like, I know are you pretty involved in that side as well?
Yeah, I do. I do a lot of the back end stuff. Like I do a lot of the graphics. It's not my forte. I really try my best, but Illustrator makes me want to rip my hair out. But for at least a year now, I've been doing all of our graphics, so like all of our design templates and things like that. We love to plan events, so we do a lot of event planning. I'm like really involved in all of that stuff. We make edibles. I'm like very involved in all of the development of all of those things. So it's really fun. It's a real team effort. And it's the two of us and now Drake in the washroom.
Shouts out to Drake. Drake's the real MVP.
We will definitely be chatting about Drake more. Actually, let's chat about it now. Adam, let's talk about the lab. You recently upgraded from hand washing in a stainless vessel to an automated machine from Hashtech. What's your current setup look like? What are you running?
Dude, yes. Well, we're super. It got to a point where I sort of hurt my shoulder, and we couldn't get through the amount of material we were needing to, and it just nicely coincided with the first melding of the heads in Washington, where we got to play around with the Hashtech 65T. So I went into the melding of the heads very much looking at that as a test drive, like knowing that my hand washing days would be numbered, and I liked what Hashtech was doing, and I thought they were the most affordable of anything that I've seen on the machine side so far. So we got to use that for basically 2 days. I was really, when we were using it with Mikey of MTS Farms and Professor Q, we were just trying to basically, we each had a sort of motion we were looking for, and we were trying to see how difficult it would be to dial the machine in to get to that sort of motion. And we all sort of hit what we were looking for. So I was happy with what it could do. I knew that 65T was too big for our space. That's sort of like, for anyone who doesn't know, it's like an all-encompassing unit. It's pretty large.
It tilts.
It has the ability to tilt. You don't need like a table or anything. You know, it comes on casters, I'm pretty sure. But for our setup, I don't think I could get it through our door. So that was so
prior to the hashtag, what did your lab look like?
Pretty much, you know, like blow for blow, it looked pretty similar to what it does now, but instead of where, you know, right now we have the hashtag sitting on a stainless steel table. Before that, we had our 32-gallon brute container on a what would you call that? It's like one of those like lift carts, you know, like it's got like a foot pedal on the bottom and it's hydraulic. So we would wash on that, and then for a long time we were just straight lifting things up. And then once my shoulder started getting sore, I you know, drilled some holes. We got some bulkhead adapters, and we put some drains on them to make our life a little easier. But it was pretty much that, dude. You know, we keep our reservoir in our cold room to keep the water as cold as we can, so we don't have to spend as little energy as we can cooling the water down. We're really lucky that we've got a sink and we've got running water in our cold rooms, and thusly like a drain. So we've got our, you know, secondary filters in our cold room, and we've got our drain sink in there as well.
What kind of bags do you run?
Right now we're rocking the Micron extract bags for our collection bags, and for the cube bags that we're running in the washing machine. I want to do some R&D on some other cube bags. I think they're all going to kind of suck, unfortunately. I don't think there's a great design. I've had a couple of issues with the Micron extract cube bags, but pretty much all of those cube bags I feel like have some flaw somewhere along the line. So it's just sort of, you know.
Before we go into like where you're seeing these flaws in these cube bags, I want to dive into this topic because previously to this, you washed in, as you mentioned, a brute, and or a bruteless, and you watched naked, and now with this new machine, what's the reason that you're choosing to wash in bags here?
Well, our first test wash we actually did naked.
Sure did.
And it was, you know, I preface this always by saying that the material was like D grade. It was not, you know,
it was bad.
It was not like nice nug. It was like very small, almost like powderized fresh rosin, like basically something that I was saving to test drive this before I put other people's stuff in there. And that wash did not go very well for me. I had some issues. I had basically two issues. The material was so fine that it started clogging up the false bottom for me, so that I couldn't drain all the water on the first sort of dump. So that was problematic. Then when I went to recirculate the water back up, because the perforations were clogged, when the water came up, the whole false bottom lifted up almost like a shelf, and then material got underneath that false bottom. So then I went for my second pull, my ball valve was clogged with plant material. So, you know, thankfully it was like stuff that I was saving for that specific reason, that I was expecting nothing out of, really. Like, it wasn't great material. But it made me gun shy to go naked. I also found, especially with no can liner, especially, the cleanup was extremely difficult and extremely time consuming. And, you know, we're mostly processing other people's material. We're, you know, hopefully be walking into a grow in the near future, but our priority is being able to be as efficient as we can with our time. So when I'm trying to run multiple sort of batches in a day, I couldn't spend the amount of time it took me to clean in between runs. Doing them in the Q bags, everything stays nice and contained, which means that when I'm switching in between people's runs, it's a lot easier for me to get back into the next one. If you think about it, like what's easier, grabbing 3 or 4 Q bags with like 2,000 grams of material, or 150-gallon bag with 8,000 grams of material? Like,
and what adjustments have you had to make operating with the cubes versus how you used to operate before?
Well, I mean, that's the thing. It's like there was never really like a buff. I used to wash with cubes when I first started washing. Actually, I'm pretty sure I've got some pictures of my OG washes, but I used to use the cubes. I was trying to follow the 710 lab sort of style tech. And it was good. It was fun. I didn't really have a problem. We really switched from cube bags to open washing because we found that we could stuff more material in a barrel naked as opposed with the cubes. The cubes, we felt like you need a lot more water. You need a lot more room for them to move around in for the extraction to be efficient. And that is true. And there are some, different things you have to worry about when you're using the cube bags versus the versus naked washing. Because your biggest worry with the cube bags is just like your material getting bunched up, because it's not as open. Your material doesn't have the room to flow like it does in the naked washes. So
being able to work with material that you've had experience with prior, are you able to achieve the same level of quality that you were achieving before?
For sure. Quality-wise, absolutely. Yields are just about on point, too. It's sort of tough going batch to batch, but everything's been just about on point. So but that's mostly
the melt is beautiful.
The melt is beautiful. A lot of it is getting you've seen me post on my Instagram stories. I'm posting our washes, and the way I have the machine running is that there's this sort of movement where the bags sort of flip themselves. I'm looking for the bag movement because for the first wash, I'm pretty much like standing there washing it, and every couple minutes or so I'll stop and I'll sort of move the bags around because the first wash is always, if you think about it, the material is like by volume, it's going to be the most, and then as the washes go on, it sort of slowly releases the water and your bags sort of get a lot smaller and everything moves a lot easier. So I sort of baby that first wash, just making sure that nothing's bunching up, trying to make sure the water's flowing as nicely as we can. And then the other thing, since we've used the Q bags, I between the Q bags and the washing machine, I'm definitely using more water per wash, which is, not ideal if you're like, I don't know. I feel like water hash would use a lot of water. I try to be as conservative as we can, but to get the movements that I wanted to make sure we have the flow, like I have to use a lot more water than what I was using previously. But that's sort of the trade-off. Use a little bit more water and don't have to do as much physical activity, and that's sort of a no-brainer for me right now.
From a technical perspective, what are some of the issues that you as a maker see with these cube bags?
There is just, if you think about it, they're definitely getting jostled, which like that's wear and tear. That's tough for sort of anything. What I've found is, we had issues like this. Like, I went to go zip a bag up and it just got off the treads basically. And like, I can't get it back on. Like I have to maybe bring this thing to like, I don't know, like a tailor or like a shoemaker or something, like, because zipper repairs are like a weird niche thing. And then another one of them, this was my fault. I thought I had pulled out all of my bags. I was going to clean in between rounds, and I pull all of my cube bags out. I empty them out. I spray them down. I hang them up. I thought I grabbed all of them, and I accidentally left one of them in the vessel. And I use a cleaner called Star Sand, which is like a high acid base. And I accidentally poured that onto a bag that I didn't realize was still in the machine. and that actually fucked with like the stitching. So that was my fault. I can't blame anybody but myself. Like that stuff is really not meant to be. It's great for stainless steel and food grade plastic, and it'll sanitize anything it touches. We basically wash it through our wash vessel, then spray that down with water, and then it goes into our collection vessel, and then we spray that down with water. We move all of that water through our recirculating pump, and that sort of cleans all of the connections internally, and then we flush everything with fresh water. But yeah, I think it's just like the problem is you want like a robust zipper, but you don't want it to be metal because it's going to be getting beaten up in a stainless steel vessel, and you don't want to like scratch your vessel too much. I just think like trying to stitch those like micron nylons is a hard task in general.
Yeah.
So I think if someone can develop one where there's almost like no stitching and it's almost just like a shaped, you know, if it could just be like a stitchless cube, I feel like that'd be the best possible thing.
That would be incredible.
I don't know how that works, but maybe somebody in the manufacturing side. I've heard good things about the low template cube bags, but then I also had someone tell me that they suck. So
you just gotta try them out.
We're gonna we're gonna do some testing, you know.
Yeah, you gotta do. I want to switch gears a bit and ask you about personal preference stuff.
Love it.
You are Mission Hill Melts, so I think it's suiting to start with. You know, where do you guys fall with the rosin versus melt on a personal preference standpoint? You know, let's start with Hana.
I don't have a preference because I think that there's a time and a place for both. Like they're both really beautiful things. It's really hard for me to choose between melt and rosin. Like that's why when we were talking about judges panels for melting of the heads, I was like, put me wherever you want to put me, like figure out what Caitlin likes best and then put me on the other one because I love them both. I'll smoke them both all day long. Jameson knows, like I'll sit there and I'll smoke all day long. I'll do either. I'll do melt or rosin. So
what about you, Adam?
I love melt, and like rosin is for the amount of product we smoke, we could only do rosin. Like hash is a very like special thing, and you really gotta like take your time with it, and like the fine, you know, difference between
it's
that
like
perfect temp is a lot
ceremonial
smaller.
a little bit. It's like fun for special occasions. Like you have guests over that you really like, you pull out the head stash melt, you know. It's
a special thing. It's not something I want to do every day.
Yeah.
And the real truth is that, you know, even we wash a lot of stuff, and like not a lot of stuff is melt worthy. A lot of that stuff, you know, like it could be all rosin.
Yeah.
And like when you get some stuff where you're like, wow, like this is like, you know, you flag it out and it looks like rosin, you're like, I want to share this with my homies, you know. But yeah, I think it just melt is if you have time and you have something particularly special that you want to smoke.
If it's what we smoke more, it's rosin all day. All day.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's definitely some magic in melt. I'm still not confirmed one way or another whether the effect that I feel when I smoke melt is because I smoke more rosin, and then when I smoke melt, my body's not as used to it, so it hits me much harder when it's good melt, because I've never been in a situation where I've smoked for months more melt than rosin and seen the difference there. But I feel as though there's definitely a medicinal benefit with melt being unadulterated and not exposed to any heat or pressure, and then having those kind of like, it's almost like safety brakes where it won't let you hit it too hot. Like if you hit, you're going to know, and it's just going to be so apparent, and you're going to cook something that you were supposed to, you know, slow boil. So yeah. I think that, you know, there's definitely place for both. And so
happens for us. I don't know if it's the same with you guys, but we won't smoke melt for a while, and then it'll be like we'll have like a melt like night or like afternoon where we'll be like, all right, like we're gonna blow through a lot more ISO than we usually do. We're gonna whip out like 3 or 4 things and put them all on parchment and flag them out and see how they look and sort of dab them, because then it's like if you're just dabbing melt for a little while on the same bangers, it almost makes it a little less painful.
Yeah. Fresh press versus cold cure. Where are you falling on this, Adam?
Cold cure.
Hana,
9.5 times out of 10 cold cure.
Unless it's trash.
There's a very rare instance where the fresh press stuff comes out tastier. And maybe it's like, I don't know, maybe it's just because when I usually am smoking fresh press, it's like really fresh press. Like, hasn't been off the plates for more than like an hour or two. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like a lot of times I take fresh press dabs and I don't get the full profile.
Hana, you were in agreement with that statement?
Yeah, I feel like for the most part when I would say, yeah, for the most part when I pick up a jar of cold cure, I don't get a ton off the nose. And when I pick up a jar of fresh press, I don't get a ton off the nose. And like, for example, at anything that's on our fucking table right now, this strawberry cannoli, first of all, like I can smell this from here. It smells like strawberries. I want that. I prefer that.
What do you say? What do you say to the people that would argue the other side of the coin, where if you can smell it from here, then those are terpenes oxidizing, and all the terps are inside the fresh press for you to have when you dab it?
I don't give a shit.
I haven't had that experience.
I don't.
Maybe there's just I don't know. I just haven't had that experience.
There are very few things, and I've smoked I smoke a lot. So there's very few things. There's maybe been like a couple of things from Q, because he does all fresh press, So there's maybe been a couple of things from Q that I'm like, wow, this is crazy.
I feel like it's almost like the diamond and jam conversation that we've had, where like lots of stuff doesn't do great with heat tech, but every now and then you find something that really does do nicely. It's kind of like that with fresh press, where I feel like most stuff as fresh press is pretty meh, and then every now and then you'll find a particular strain that it's like, oh, this might actually be a little nicer when it's fresh. Like it might lose a little light terpene.
Like the Trop cookies. I love it as fresh press. We keep it as fresh press always. When it batters up, it loses the orange juice and it goes more like lemony.
Yeah, I get like almost like a lemon cleaner, like almost Windexy, honestly.
And I prefer the orange. So that's one thing in particular where I prefer the fresh press 100%. But other than that,
that shit also oxidizes though too. So it looks nicer as fresh press than cold cure.
Do either of you feel as though you've come across anything in your history that would do better cured or at least dried rather than live?
No. Honestly, no. And I don't. I've washed dried stuff, and I have literally never liked almost anything dry material wise that I've washed. It would, at best, it would be like, okay, this isn't bad, and that's like not really what you want to hear about your material. Like, I think we're sort of a fresh frozen or bust household here.
Yeah, we are.
If people ask me to spin dry material, I literally tell them we're A, don't have freezer space, and B, like really not interested unless they want to pay us like a prohibitive amount of money to wash it. Then I'll spin their mids.
As a toll processor who has a unique look at a lot of different people's gardens, but I know you have a number of repeat, or not repeat, but farmers that you work closely with year after year. Do you notice much difference crop to crop when you're washing the same material from a different either indoor or outdoor crop? Do you see much variance in that?
Oh, for sure. For sure. I mean, you like crop to crop wise, definitely. It's, Maine's kind of funky where like, your rooms have to be built to be able to run in like really, really cold and dry external conditions. And then on the other side during the summertime, it's not super hot, but it can get warm. And then, we've got some humidity. So it's usually depends on like how everyone's rooms are running. But for the most part, I feel like...
Okay, so for Aloha, for example,
does it show up more in like size of head or yield percentage?
Yield for sure.
Okay. So the heads kind of fall where they fell last year, and it's just the amount, the percentage.
In terms of, if we're going outdoor comparison this year to
outdoors
last year,
crazy
this
different.
year we had a beautiful outdoor growing season. Maine is notorious for having not great growing climate, but we really had this pretty dry, pretty mild summer and fall, and like usually once October hits, it's like a dark, humid rain cloud just descends on all of outdoor.
Last year it rained like 3 weeks in a row at the end of outdoor season in Maine. It was a fucking nightmare.
Yeah, so it's like if your stuff's not like, packed up by like early October, it's usually 50-50. But this year, the entire month of October has been pretty fucking dry, which was, a godsend if you're growing outdoors.
That finishing week for most people was like 8 straight days of gorgeous like sun. It was really, this year was a really nice end of season, particularly.
So we run,
stuff has been gorgeous.
We run different bag sets when we're doing indoor versus outdoor, mostly because your indoor stuff is just so clean because you're in a controlled environment versus the outdoor stuff where even when you're in a greenhouse, it's still just a little bit more. You got a little more dirt and dust and whatnot.
So what are your bag sets? How do they vary?
So usually when we're doing indoor stuff, our growers will get a first wash 90U, which is like a true 90 to 119 technically. It's just the 90 bag. And then everything else gets scooped into what we call our full spectrum. So that would be 40U up to basically 219, 180, something like that. And then on the outdoor side, we do 90 to 149, so the 90 and the 120 U bag together from all of the washes, and then everything higher than the 150 and lower than the 90 we collect in what we usually label our food grade, because last season it was a bad outdoor year, so it was not really pretty and not really stuff you would want to smoke on for the most part. But this season, almost everything we've pulled for people
has been nice.
Beautiful. It's been really nice. So, we're just calling it mixed micron this season. And it's not the premium spectrums, but it's really, really, really solid budget smoke for our homies who want to support us, but can't be spending the premium dollars on the premium stuff. It's a nice happy medium.
What are your thoughts on, and what are your observations that you can make on sun-grown resin versus indoor resin?
Man, it's usually greasier, dude, and like I can say that pretty confidently. Like
sun-grown.
Yeah.
Yes.
Almost, like the hash is harder to work with. The rosin usually comes out wetter.
It is wet.
Like I love my boys, and their indoor stuff is really nice. And the color might be a touch nicer on the indoor stuff and on the melt, factor. Especially when you're looking at it under the scope, your indoor stuff is gonna have much less like, dust and like visible contaminant, but yeah, more. There have been several times where we've pulled trays of outdoor stuff and like I couldn't even sieve it because it was so greasy. Like,
like that Dosido last year.
The Sunset Sherb was pretty unstable, very greasy. Like, and this is like a little bit of free freeze dryer game, but you set your freeze dryer and your cycle ends. We let our freeze dryer trays hang out for at least an hour after that cycle ends because the freeze cycle it goes into to hold is colder than the dry cycle it's finishing on. So if you let it go down to the colder temp, it's a little bit easier to work with. So like that Sunset Sherb, when I checked it like immediately after it finished drying, like it was basically like one sheet, you know, like you lift the parchment up and it just sort of like comes and goes as like one fold. But then we let it sit for I think we let that one go for 2 hours because I was scared. And I managed to work with it and sort of break it up. But yeah, the outdoor stuff definitely comes out, has a higher resin content.
It's louder.
The terpene tests are coming out, you know, pretty impressively if you're into analytics. Like we take all that shit with a grain of salt. But
even just the nose on everything is like,
no, it's
it
loud.
bangs. It is
Dude,
really loud from far away.
Here, you wanna put some of this up? Like this is all outdoor stuff that we're about to show, and like color wise, it's beautiful. Like these were grown by people who, you know, they really put time and effort into their outdoor season.
But there's like nothing left in some of these jars.
We've been
can't stop smoking it.
We've been working with one of our homies, Cold River Cultivation, basically since like the spring. Like as soon as he was getting his garden planned out, he hit us up.
Well, he hit us up last year and he wanted us to process, but he had dried his material. And we were like, sorry, we can't do that for you. But if you freeze all of your stuff next year, we'll do it all. So
his property that he grows on is off the grid, so he doesn't have electricity on it. So
the commitment on this guy, it's like so incredible. He takes a Jenny out to the field and he like harvests into freezers on a Jenny in the field. It's amazing.
Yeah, and then he talked to his neighbors who were kind enough to.
What about salt grown versus you know, biologically grown indoor? Are you able to have an opinion on the difference there? Or?
Yeah, I think on average in our experience, between what we've washed up here and the stuff that I washed in Rhode Island that was salt grown, very nice. You know, the color is really nice, and oftentimes the melt might be even a little bit cleaner, you know, depending on what media you're growing in. Like if you're growing in like that rock wool shit or even like cocoa, like there's like almost like no contaminant ever. Whereas if you have soil and like biology, it's a little bit more likely to have specks. So melt wise, it might be a little bit cleaner, but I haven't seen juicy melt come out of salt grown stuff.
Terp wise, it's never there for me either. Like it never bangs as loud.
I'm trying to think of like most of the stuff that we've grown that's been salt grown usually doesn't want to like batter up nicely. You know, it's like really dry and you're like struggling to like whip it up.
Yeah. You mentioned jams and jar tech earlier, and I know just from being close with you that Mission Hill doesn't do any types of jams or jar techs, doesn't apply any type of heat. What is the reasoning behind that decision?
Yeah,
I just think that once you start to add a certain amount of heat, you really lose a lot of the really nice, really desirable terps.
Yeah. We, you know, especially when we were, you know, doing more, now people mostly drop off material to us, but especially when we were like picking up material and we'd have to do the dry ice hauls and the cooler shuffles and whatnot. Like, you know, you're spending all this time trying to be so delicate with this resin and keep it cold from the time it was harvest, and you don't want to crush it, and you're trying to wash it gently, and you're freeze drying it at low temperatures and pressing it as, you know, low as we can while not like sacrificing yield. And then it's like to go through all of that just to then put that shit in a fucking toaster oven, it just kills me. And as we said before, from our personal experience, you know, 9.5, maybe 9 out of 10 things that you try to heat tech, we won't enjoy as much as if it was.
I've had like 2 things ever that have been heat teched that have blown me away.
Yeah, Mikey's Sunday driver literally got me fucked up. Literally, I have to, every time I talk shit on Jartech, I have to like put in a disclaimer that like MTS Farms is the exception to the rule, pretty much. Because that shit was fantastic. But I'm trying to think, what else besides Mikey's stuff have we had?
There was, I don't know if Terp Wizard still does heat tech, but at one point Terp Wizard was doing heat tech, and
the Fruit Joy
gave us
Fruit
something.
Joy jam. Did you guys?
Oh yeah,
try
and
it?
the fruit joy jam.
That
The
was
fruit
good.
joy
It was
jam.
definitely different though, and you could taste
Super
it.
different.
It was not the same as the fruit joy. Like they taste like they taste like very different things. So
Yeah.
it changes the terp profile.
Yeah, for sure. So I wanted to talk about, we're seeing a rise in resin mixing and blending.
Yeah.
Is that something that you guys are actively doing?
Yep.
Big time.
We do a lot of mix washing, and a lot of it is out of necessity to meet batch sizes because of things like pheno hunts and stuff like that. But it's a lot of fun. I think a lot of times, because pretty much we're processing for people that we really like and that we're friends with. So it's really fun to sit down with our growers and be like, cool, I think that like this, and this pheno are going to wash really well together. And I think the terp profile is going to come out like this. So what's a cool thing we can call it? You know, it's like a fun brainstorming bonding experience between us and our growers, which I personally really enjoy.
Yeah. It's just like a lot of the times it's like we're not doing mix washes because we're like, oh shit, we're sitting on all of this like same material. How can we mix it together to have like 8 strains instead of 3? We're really doing it either because we want to help a grower meet a batch minimum for us, or just because sometimes we really like the mixes. Some of the best things we've put out have been mixed washes.
Oh god, the tropical high shoes is so good. That's a mixed wash.
And we're doing physical mixes. We're mixing fresh frozen in the bags together, washing it. We're not really. I don't really like. I just think it mixes better if you're doing it together instead of taking 2 finished product and mixing them.
It's like cooking.
It's hard to
you want the
homogenize.
Ingredients to make love in the pot, you know? So mix them all together.
Do you feel like we're going to see a rise on the commercial side of the solventless industry in the next 5 years, where more things are going to be blends and it's going to grow in popularity?
I think so, because it's like that's the workaround to genetics, right? Like that's the cheat pathway to genetics. Like you want to find a flavor profile that's like, I don't know, like super grapey but has like root beer on the back end. You're gonna have to hunt for like 17 years to find that plant. But if you do a mixed wash, like you can achieve that flavor profile. So I think that that's something that's going to catch on a lot just because of ease in the journey to find the flavor,
Yeah. And then bigger companies are going to do it just because the reason I said before, where they're going to have so much
people sitting on material, so they have to be creative.
Speaking on genetics, like how important do you see genetics being over the next 5 years? I think that we've witnessed, just due to the scarcity of genetic varietals that work well and commercially in a solventless setting, we've seen like a lot of passing around happening in the last few years. And now I think we're starting to see different farmers or single source makers kind of start to hold things a little tighter. Do you see that as a trend continuing, or like what are your thoughts on genetics in the industry?
Yeah. Well, it really depends on like what you're trying to do, but short answer is yes. The long answer is depending on what you're doing. Like, all of the Cali people, they're all big on like, oh, I'm gonna be selling my IP. Like I'm gonna just like like the RS11 and the Doja packs type shit. Like they're just hoping to make a couple of hype in-house strains and just keep selling the rights to those off to big companies. I think for the hash makers, though, I think that having unique genetics is what's going to, be your ability to grow is going to be the first thing. But if you have unique genetics, I think that will help tremendously.
I think
if you want variety,
I think that for people like us, for people who are kind of on the same somewhat scale as us, or people of the same mindset, basically what is going to keep you alive is some variety of exclusivity. You know what I mean? So we're lucky that You know what we're lucky. We have things like, for example, I brought up the tropical high chews. The tropical high chews is a mixed wash of stuff from our buddy Aloha.
It's a
it's a mixed wash, it's a 4-strain wash of phenos that he selected out of packs that he pheno hunted. So someone can buy those packs and like try to make a tropical high chews, but they're not going to have the tropical high chews. Aloha has the tropical high chews, and nobody else has that. And you can't go to the other producers that are out in Maine and get the tropical high chews. You have to, you have to get it from the people who made the tropical high chews. That's it. It's the same thing. Like it's just like the Fruit Joy. Like that's right now. You want Fruit Joy? Canadian Dabs. You got, it's the same kind of thing.
Don't get fooled on no Fugazi Fruit Joy. There ain't no.
It's only one. There can be only
proprietary.
Tying genetic to the brand and growing the brand equity through the genetic notoriety, I think is what we're going to see a lot more of. I mean, the way that Addison's doing it is different, where he's providing access to a large group to optimize basically like a dying or suffering system, which I think is like a very different thing, where he's going, okay, well, you don't have time to search for your own thing, but I've done it.
Yes.
I have the nursery that's ready for you. And, utilizing guys like Little Lake Valley to get genetics that are proven with washers into the hands of farmers, and then connecting those farmers with processors. I mean, that's the goal. I think that once you evolve past that and you're able to, I think that you can even get to a point where you're cultivating a cut so differently and producing such a unique product that you differentiate yourself that way. Like, do you guys feel one way or another about naming phenotypes? Like, you talked about the Starburst, or I'm sorry, I forgot the name. Tropical High Chew. And, how that's Aloha's are you pro to naming phenotypes within varietals?
Absolutely.
I think give
homage to the person who created those genetics. You always give homage. You always give credit to the person who created those genetics. I think it's totally fair. You want to name a pheno that you hunted? I think that's totally fair. But that's your pheno of this pack that was created by this person, because it is always important in our industry to respect people and put respect on people's names.
Absolutely.
And I feel like especially for consumers, I would rather call something by what it smells and tastes like, because that's, if I tell you something is straw guava, but it's fucking gassy, say, am I doing anybody any favors by not calling it closer to what it tastes like? Like, I want people to get what they think, I want the strain name to be representative of what they're going to smoke on.
What do you think about that, Addison?
I mean, everyone has their own job. The breeder has a job. They breed and create genetics. People can grab those genetics. People can, pop beans and look at, different versions of those genetics that are there. But it's really like there's work that goes into all of that. Like you were saying about California, like we're here in California, it's a production-rich place. Like we have a lot of production space and there's a lot of producers. So there's a need for pipeline because it's a service to the farm. Really, that's kind of, you help them sell their material. So it's just, the point there is that it's just different in every place.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's why I love, all these, having access to all the different people in different regions of the country. Different things are a major focus in that area for that producer, so it's, I don't know, it's just kind of like, I think that when people push themselves further in the direction of the stuff that they're really good at and less into all this other bullshit, that it's better for everybody.
Absolutely. I got a couple more technical questions for you, Mission, before we move on. I want to know your thoughts on hash yields. You hear me ask this question a lot. I know I don't need to ask you if it's something you've put a lot of thought into. I know you're as hash and resin obsessed as I am. So, talk to me a little bit about, what you see in the future of our industry and where you see maybe a normalization or better understanding of yields going?
Yeah, it's like the hash yields are quickly becoming the new THC percentage. I feel like people selling genetics with these numbers attached, and it's, I just think it's misleading all around. Like we had a homie our homie Cold River Cultivation. He bought us a watermelon Skittles cut, and he told me that supposedly it was supposed to do 6% plus. And I told him, I'm like, if we hit 6% on this, like, I'll be stoked, but I don't think it's gonna hit that. I think 4, maybe 5, like on a good day, but I don't see it hitting 6. I've never had a watermelon Skittles do that crazy numbers, personally. And it did well. I think it did about 4 and change, 4.5 almost.
Yeah,
which is good.
For
it's
full
great.
term outdoor,
It's not
especially
6.
and that yielded heavy in the premium bags too. It did really nicely.
Mm-hmm.
But I just think, first of all, we've talked about this, that water hash yield doesn't tell the whole story. It's that potential resin per square foot, where how does the plant yield on the biomass side, and then how does it yield to water hash, and then how greasy is that water hash and then yielding into rosin. And it's also too, it's just at the end of the day, you got to grow stuff that works well for you. If you've got a finicky ass strain that's not getting in line with your regimen, or it's not fitting in your schedule, don't grow it. It's not going to do the numbers that people are telling you it's going to do, just because it's not in its happy environment. Some strains really like bottle feeds and salt. They don't do well in organics and soil. And at some point you just gotta know what you're growing and how it's gonna do for you. I'm trying to think, what was it? I'm not sure if it's Banana OG. We ran something for TJ for one of our friends back in the day, and it did okay in water hash. It did something 3.5, but it yielded so heavy on the biomass side. It would almost triple the biomass of
Oh, I remember that.
I can't remember what it is right now. I'm blanking out, but because it yields so heavy on the biomass side, that 3% is irrelevant, because it yields so much heavier per square foot than the other strains. So I hope that people start not worrying too much about that, or start taking heavy yielding shit and crossing it with shit that yields terrible, trying to wash some stuff, because we've also talked about we've been really on this big smoking equatorial sativa rosin that doesn't yield for shit, and it's the worst sort of taste I could have developed, because I just want to smoke that shit in the morning, but it costs me
$120 a gram
to produce. But if someone could work on those sort of crosses, I think that will be where where you can start getting exotic things that usually don't yield well. If you can start outcrossing them to maybe become a little bit more viable.
Do you see it in the genetics only, or do you see it in an evolution in solventless extraction technology? Do you think that there's going to be a lot of change over the next 3 to 5 years in machinery or machinery design?
I think there will be. I don't think it's going to necessarily revolutionize hash. I think it's one of those things where it'll be great for suits and huge companies who want commercial huge freeze dryers and stuff, but it's one of those things where I don't think it's going to make the hash any better. I think it's mostly in the genetics. We wash some stuff, and some stuff just doesn't come out well in water hash. And I don't think if my water was any colder, or any other, I don't think there was anything we could do differently that would make that come out better, unless it was worked genetically,
Do you see an ability or a future in I know some people working on the commercialization of dry sifting. What are your thoughts there?
I've never personally been super impressed with dry sift. I feel like dry sift to people is kind of like how like the high cannabinoid solventless thing was to me. Like I was really trying to make beautiful, super high testing solventless diamonds. And it took a lot of effort, and the yields, sometimes would hurt. And at the end of the day, it's really not like a great product. You're really just doing it for the sake of it's almost like you're doing it for the sake of making it. It's a challenge. Like, how well can I clean up these heads? How pure can I make? And I'm actually I'll put a picture, but like we made really nice solventless THCA, and then it just got to a point where I'm like, all right, this is dumb. Like it costs so much money for me to produce, and especially the solventless THC tastes like nothing. Like dry sift is a little bit nicer, but I've never found the melt factor to be there on 99% heads, which is tough. And like the Cuban sift was very expensive when I lived in LA. Like it was like 160 to 185 a gram, depending on which like bougie dispensary you went to.
It's expensive.
And even at the purest 99.9% heads, it's still really dabbed like a 5, maybe 5.5 star water hash. Like I would rather have the juicy, fresh frozen with a little bit of char than the really nicely separated dry sift. And yeah, I don't know. Hey, no. I think, after we went to Canada and sort of saw your market where there's lots of people who are real hyped on the traditional hash still, I think that maybe for those sort of markets, sort of the larger industrial, but I think for our connoisseur homies, like I don't think us three, like we're not really ever smoking too much traditional hash unless it's sort of like a special occasion or a celebration thing.
I was out of my element when we were smoking traditional hash.
Bro, that shit's narcotic, bro.
It gets you.
And I smoke a lot.
You're taking.
And I was like,
you're taking a nap.
You need espresso.
Yeah,
dude,
I was
seriously.
tired.
We weren't ready for that.
It puts you down. It's really crazy. It is super sedative.
It's batty.
Yeah.
So I want to switch gears a little bit and move out of the washroom and talk about marketing and branding, because I think it's very important. Adam actually attended Melting of the Heads, the first Melting of the Heads. Hana was supposed to be attending and was helping with her mother. But Adam gave a talk on marketing, and I thought it was really well done. And you have been able to leverage social media better than others to gain notoriety for your brand and portray a much larger image than potentially was reality behind the scenes. And I just want to talk a little bit about that and understand, was it early on that you understood you had that power through social media, or did it take some time to learn and leverage those skills?
It definitely took some time. When I first started, it was really just like I was excited to post. Also, this was like when Instagram was friendly and you could just post hash all the time. So it was mostly like young me being excited and just wanting to post what I was working on. And then it's like I just like when I first started smoking concentrate, I would smoke this shit and I was always like, who's making this? Like where, where's this coming from? Like it's just like there's just sort of a brand or an envelope or something, and that was always sort of it. You never sort of got like any idea of the people usually, and that would obviously made sense because it was not as legal as it is today. But so
it's like, this is magic. I must know more.
Yeah. So I think for the first couple years, until more recently, obviously, like that was the big thing, was that I would post things, but not like a ton of stuff. I never really posted like our face, and like it was just really hard to find our shit. Like that was the real thing. At first, it was just you really couldn't find our stuff, like unless you knew me, and like if you go on Reddit and like search our name, like you'll find Reddit threads of people on like Boston Trees like complaining about like not being able to find us and like us not responding to our DMs. And it was just because like I was just like making enough for me and the homies pretty much. And I wasn't really even using it as sales. It was just like, and that's the best. Like people always want what they can't have, for the most part. So like we were really, really small batch and we just didn't have that much, dude. People would always hit us up for wholesale. And I'm like, I don't have wholesale. Like some of the stuff we wash, like we don't even have like multiple ounces of like, and it's a lot of work. I'm like, I'd rather break it down at that point. So, keeping that mystique, I think was really important, for the first couple of years. Like we would be very like, you wouldn't really see us post too much. We'd selectively post like, action shots of work and, like wash water. You'd see like the occasional rosin picture, but
merch drops.
Yeah. And then we sort of like, and then it was sort of like,
you were early adopters to the merch. I thought you did that earlier than most.
Yeah, pretty much as soon as we got the logo, like revitalized, because I made the original logo in PowerPoint. So
do you have it?
Let's see. I think I might actually. I've got one of the early ones. Yeah, this is one of the early ones. And actually, this one I think is okay. This one's looking a little more symmetrical. This might not be the 100% OG one, but this is like one of the original ones that we made up. But yeah, no, I got hoodies pretty much off the rip because I knew that I always wanted to have I wanted to represent myself, and I had a bunch of homies, and I knew that like, that's like the best marketing is you just have people wear your stuff. And in terms of our like the logo, like I really just got lucky. It's like I made that pretty quickly, all things considered. I didn't like it wasn't like I sat down for days and had like, like think groups. It was
because
like,
what is your logo?
Yes, what is the logo? The logo is the beautiful seed of life, and then there's a Jewish star subliminally put right in there. So I am culturally Jewish, like not really religious whatsoever. Yeah. So threw that in there with the seed of life because like we're more like spiritual and we like psychedelics in the universe and like it's sort of more what we were about and connectedness. So just worked out, and I always knew that we always wanted to end up with our products in jars. So I wanted to make something that would look nice on jar tops. That was what we were always thinking. And then it just became like something cool that we could spend some extra time on. Like I like streetwear and stuff. I used to collect like Supreme stuff, and I always thought their accessories were the coolest shit. Just putting
Supreme wall.
Just putting Supreme logos on random dumb shit, and people being like, "That's sweet. I need to own that." I'm like, "That is awesome!" Like that power in a brand to be able to like. Like they put their logo on like a hatchet or a step stool or an oar, and people are like, "This is sick!" Like
Ziploc bags, cough drops, earplugs.
It's crazy. So we always try to make cool, kind of different merch, and we always try to make fun accessories that were always hash adjacent that people could fuck with. Like we did a collab with a company called Turk Cooler back in the day. They like do like small insulated locking pouches that you can travel. They have little ice packs that fit nicely in them.
They have a little jar that comes with it that you can fill ISO with. It's nice. It's nice to put your jar. You can fit like 6 gram jars in there or something like that.
We're just trying to like find stuff that we like and we use, and then see if there's any way that we can co-brand. And alchemy jars is a great example. That's like, I saw that come out, I saw them teasing that, and I was like, I love this. I think this is a fucking cool thing that people have been asking for in some way, shape, or form.
We bought a jar. I stress tested it. We bought a jar in the middle of summer. I filled it with hash. I filled it with rosin. I took it to Philly. It was like 98 degrees in Philly, and I left it in my car. And my car was black on black. So I like left it in a fucking oven for like 5 days. And then I came home and I opened it up, and it was like the same as it was when I left.
Minimal discoloration. It was still super wet. It still dabbed really nicely.
I was like, this is dope. And then literally 2 days later, we hit him up and we put an order in.
Yeah.
So we're trying to put out stuff that like we like and we're using you know.
Trying to stay like up to date on stuff too, and like planning stuff out is kind of tough. But like, you know, like you see something like that, and I feel like it's kind of important to be one of the first people to do it, especially like regionally, because it's one of those things where it's really cool and you want one, but it's like grabbing more than one is kind of like
unnecessary,
you know,
a little bit.
They're on the bigger side too, you know, so it's got to be like a big head stash thing. So
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
sort of knowing your market too is important. I think we do a good job with sort of like tapping into our like area and our, you know, who's buying our stuff, where exactly are we, like what are some cool like culturally local things going on that we can tie in.
You guys run a very active Discord group as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's sort of that's another thing, you know, that was out of necessity because, you know, Instagram is not friendly. And it bums me out, honestly, dude. Like, I really do like wish I could just share stuff. Cause like I don't even bother taking pictures a lot of times of stuff because I can't post it. And like, you know, we made the Discord almost as like a backup.
We have like a super active Discord. We have 733 people in our Discord.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
It's pretty lit.
And it's pretty fun. I love the Discord, honestly.
Yeah.
It's
there's a lot. There's a lot of tech that gets shared. It's really open source. You guys do a good job kind of moderating it.
We have a pet flex zone. So if you're sad, there's a whole place you can go to look at cute pictures of animals. For the people.
We were in Discords before we decided to make our own. So it was kind of nice to, first of all, you really just got to get used to the app because it doesn't flow like any other social media app, just the way there is a feed that you get to.
It's
but
a
there's
unique
a lot of like
layout,
subdivisions.
You have to very much adapt to that kind of layout, and you have to know how to set it up properly. Because when you first start your Discord, it's a channel and that's it.
Yeah, it really is nice in the sense that it is a very blank canvas for you to do whatever you want. And you know, we watched a 20-minute YouTube video on how to sort of build like a medium nice Discord channel where you have sort of like, you know, like how do roles work and how you can have like, you know, bots do certain verification tasks for you. So our big things where we wanted to be visually appealing. Our biggest complaint with other Discords we were in was that
there's too much
going on. And I feel like, you know, if you have all of these sub channels and all these different things and like people just get lost and then lose interest and they don't ever. So we wanted to be fairly simple, fairly user friendly. So, you know, we have a main feed, which is where most of the people talk. Then we have like a gallery feed where it's just us posting product pictures. We got a few other, like, you know, like a grow room, which is like all the grow people and
patients exclusive. So like if you send us your patient information, we can add you to that and you can see like updated menus and things like that. So that way it's easy for you to see what's going on, put it in order. It's cool because you can set different channels to be like us. Our roles are the only roles that are able to post. So we can, that gallery, it's just us able to post, you know, so it's nice. You can keep things nice and organized. It's basically trying to like recreate. So that gallery basically is trying to recreate some semblance of like an Instagram feed where you can have just like your own pictures, you know, like a stream of pictures. So
yeah, I think you guys have done a really good job. I definitely like, that was the best way for me to get into Discord because I had Discord prior to joining yours, but I couldn't really grip into it. And then the simplicity and just workability of that, just following one general chat and being able to kind of stay up to date is cool. And the amount of information in there is ridiculous. So I think you've done a really good job building your brand through, you know, sourcing good clothing and working with you know, good providers. All the gear that I've ever gotten from you is, you know, always very high quality. So I really enjoy it. And
we're always trying to just like, you know, quality is like always the most important. Yeah. And that is like, sometimes it's tough because like, you know, our shit usually isn't cheap. And sometimes it takes us a while to find like the exact sort of like the exact type of hoodie or the exact t-shirt that we want. Like, you know, we take a lot of thought into that.
For sure. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about Legends of Hash. You are an invitee and participant this year. I know you were very involved in the planning and execution of Coffee and Donuts last summer with the Hashishin, and you are co-hosting Melting of the Heads with me in New York in January. Like, how important do you think these events are? We're starting to see a rise in solventless focused events and cannabis events in general. Like, what are your thoughts post Corona on this trend that we're seeing?
It's the future. I love it. I'm a naturally social person by nature. That was like always my mom's complaint, is that I was like overly social. So I love it, and I feel like there's only so much connection you can make through a screen, and I don't want to discount that, because there is so much value and connections that you make online, you know.
Yeah.
We met Jameson online, you know, we met Jameson through the internet, but you have FaceTime in real life with these people, and you have real life experiences with these people, and that's like really important, and that stuff really helps build relationships. And there's only so much networking, and there's only so much relationship building you can do behind a screen. And it's also really cool because this industry, obviously, a lot of people have been really quiet for a really long time because it's not something that you can be super loud about. You know, obviously, we have friends like Canadian Dabs, for example, who like he doesn't show he's not posting pictures of his face or his personal life or anything identifying at any point in time. And so, you know, the only time you're going to be able to see what Canadian Dabs looks like is if you show up to events like Legends of Hash or Melting of the Heads. Like, these events are really, really important to be able to network with people that you otherwise just would not have the opportunity to network with. It's super important. And it's just so much fucking fun. People who like drink alcohol get to hang out in these like huge, super well-designed places and partake in the substance that they enjoy together in a social gathering. Like, you can do that wherever you want. And we as people can't like sit down and take dabs with the people that we love, like in a public place. It's fucked up. It's stupid. Like, I want to go to events and I want to go to places where I can sit down and be like, look at this fire. I was like making faces earlier because I took a dab that slapped me in the fucking face. Like, I want to pass this jar to both of you. You know, I want to be in a room with you guys so I can like pass this jar to people. It's not something you can do through a screen. The events are the future.
Yeah. Especially as like a brand too. Like, we've always been active in events. Like, in our early days, we would go to like the events, and then we started throwing events in our later years. Like, but yeah, as a brand, like throwing your own events so you can just connect with your like customer base is super worthwhile. Even if you don't make any money on the event itself, you know, like the block party that we threw a few years back, like I broke even and made like maybe $100, you know, but I just wanted to make sure that we threw a fucking dope ass event. And the event was the pool party of your dreams, where you could smoke as much hash as you wanted. We roasted a whole pig. We had a DJ. There was lawn games. Like, it was fun as shit. And it was just, we weren't selling anything. We had open jars on the fucking dab table. You could help yourself too. And we were just trying to like provide a cool environment. And it was cool that like, you know, the homies could come out and meet us and talk to us. And it's nice meeting a brand, you know.
It's got to be.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I said it's got to be a trip, you know, coming up, watching Bubble Man's videos, being, you know, somebody who primarily learned online from cruising through the internet, to be able to now be attending, you know, an attendee at Legends of Hash. Like, I think that, you know, is that something that's kind of, I guess.
Oh, it's all crazy. I mean, like, you know, did you see it
getting here? Like, did you, in your wildest dreams, when you started this?
If you told me who is smoking gravity bongs in the woods that like, hey, like one day you're going to be one of these people who people like buy your shit and are hyped and like make like review videos or like, you know, like like it was crazy. Like we've had people come up to us at events and be like, "Oh, like you're the reason like we got into like hash making, or like you were the first time we smoked like solventless stuff." It's like that's
crazy.
That shit will never get old. Like don't ever not tell people shit like that, because it's like
no, it's really incredible. Like we, we're lucky enough to go to Ego Clash last year, and like Adam had been before. Obviously, last year was my first year. But it's crazy. Like, even though Adam had been before, you walk up and you're just like, wow, this is nutty. You like look around the room and you're like, this is fucking nutty. Like, I used to make medicated cupcakes and ride the elevator in my apartment building and sell them to people. And if you had told that kid that I'd be doing stuff like that, I would like laugh in your face. I was not the cool kid. I've never in my life like been the cool kid at the party. I've never been the cool kid at the table. So if you like ever told me that someone was gonna come up to me and be like, "Oh yeah, I like know you from such and such, and I watched you doing so and so," like,
and
it's
then,
crazy.
And then it goes both ways too, though, because then like we get to go to these events, and I get we get to meet the people who we like, who got us into hash making. Like when we were at Ego Clash, we were sitting across from Full Flavor Extracts, who was like one of those dudes whose hash I bought in LA in 2015. I still remember it. And like being able to like talk to like Brandon, like from Third Gen, and just like talk to him, like is like so crazy to me, because like he's the man. Like he's the undisputed hash champion of the world. That man won so many Emerald Cups, and fucking his run was fucking crazy. Like I remember seeing him at the last Secret Cup finals when he was beating BHO boys with water hash. Like, that is crazy. I don't think people understand, like, in the time where people really fucking shat on solventless. Like, solventless was a second-class citizen in the concentrate game until the freeze dryers really came around. And Brandon was out there fucking micro
nuts on
crazy
nostrils.
shit. Yeah, leg lifting, bro.
That's very cool. I think that I mean he definitely carved out a name for himself before retiring. Like I don't think anybody's come that close in as far as winning in competitions. I think it would be hard to replicate just because like the competitions are different now, and I think that you actually need to be a large corporate entity to win.
He had such a fucking jump on people, like he was really breeding stuff for hash making in a time where that wasn't like a thing to do. Like, a lot of the stuff he won on was his own genetics, which is also such a crazy flex. But like, yeah, no, we're stoked to be here. Like, I don't think we take that for granted by any means. Like, we're always like,
no, it's like crazy to be in a room with these people. Jameson knows that I'm like a weird T Beazle fangirl, and I have been for a really long time. So like the fact that we, get to call someone like Taylor a friend is
like
crazy to me.
Kaya's
Kaya,
got our phone number. We've talked to him sometimes.
That's wild.
It's like, it's such a trip. It's crazy.
No, it's definitely crazy. It's never not crazy. It's always crazy.
Yeah. Well, I know I'm super excited for Legends. It's going to be my first time. I'm very excited to see everything. I know Addison's been working really hard on it. So the 2-day concept, like the idea to pack all that energy into a room for one evening, and then it's like, I can't believe that you were able to pull it off, like, and get all that done. Like it's really cool that you spread it out into 2 days now, Addie.
You can't. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Like you can't. So like to get all those makers in one room, and then to satisfy their desire to judge one another, to like see the stuff that's in front of them and try it and have an opinion on what they're trying, you have to add the judging component. And if you do that, and you're going to have a healthy amount of makers to make it matter, then you have to cap it at some point. And when you do that, you can only judge and be able to do this with so many and so much time. So what really added the second day was just the judging. We said, all right, well, let's, we can give them 20 hours to judge it. if we add a brunch or something, we were going to add another dinner. And then it's like, it's kind of, that's like a full 2-day commitment in a sense. So we were like, all right, let's try to keep it, in line. And then the second thing that came out of it, the after effect, was that we were only able to invite 15 new makers to come for, this year, because we wanted to invite back all the makers from last year so they could get judged and judge one another and actually have a full experience. So the second day allowed us to, the makers that weren't able to make it on the list, we say, hey, we do have brunch tickets. And so now we can have a lot of makers in the room with us that can see what the experience is about, enjoy the award ceremony, have the prime rib brunch and enjoy it, and the open hash bar, and get to try all the entries and be there with everybody. But, not have to worry about competing. But then the second day is much more expense in the production costs because it's a much larger, serving to a lot more people. You have like 250 people. And then with all the staff and all the sponsors, it's about 300 people. So you have to serve food to 300 people and all these different things, which is much more expense. The production for the award ceremony, different things like that kind of add to it. But it's just, the whole thing, Legends was really about just the hash and just everyone getting together, and there was no promotion at all. But then once you take that away, you can monetize it. You can figure out how to make it bigger and bring more people in and kind of open it up in different ways, but keep it in line with sort of what it's all about, and that's the hash. So that's why there's certain little things that you'll see in there that are just sort of, dialed or perfected so that it does keep the focus on the hash. But it's, it should be fun. The outside of the event, the outside area is more of like a trade show feel, so you can come outside and have that outside kind of experience. The Toro Lounge is going to be outside. 710 will be there. I think with hash and stuff like that too in the Toro Lounge. So it's just kind of a cool, setup that'll be outside with that kind of feel. And then inside, it's more of the, find a seat, put your stuff there, kind of make it your home. Everyone's kind of seated in these large, farm tables. So it's much more stable, sturdy. Your shit's all safe. And then you can kind of walk around and kind of do your thing, which is cool. So.
And then what's the plan with moving forward? Is it always going to be in LA, or what are your plans there with the dinners?
I think what we're thinking is 2 a year, and then having it alternate between the East and the West. But then always have the LA one. Okay. So have the LA one, and then 1 year do the East, do a New England, and then do LA, and then do, Pacific Northwest, and then keep kind of going back and forth. But
very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, because you can only do 2 a year.
Yeah.
Because it takes about 6 months to get all of the planning and all the stuff done, because you have to.
Easy.
No, it is not.
Yeah, the way that you do it, it takes about 6 months pretty much. If you want to do it correctly and you want it to be like in line with the artists that you're working with, and in line with your production, and in line with everything that you want to do, because it's only one night and then one brunch. So for us, it's like, okay, we know how much work that takes, we know what that takes and what it's going to be. And then making it so that it's a good experience for everybody, from, the maker all the way to their guests, all the way to the 2-day guests, to the sponsors, to the media. You want everyone to have like a really good time. So it's like, now we're moving on to all the stuff for the gift bags, which is kind of like has its own sort of focus. But every time you do it too, you figure out better ways to do it, to produce it, to kind of make it so that it's like, oh, if I fucking do this, then, I don't have to worry about this stuff. So next year, everything will be on the website. We'll push more energy towards the e-commerce stuff, and everything will be on the website. So then it's like, you get an email, you've been selected. You go, and if you don't go and search through, go through that link and put your shit in, well, you don't have a ticket. I don't have to chase somebody. It's like, that's just how it works. I'll see if the person did it. So that's how I know the list. So it's like, there's all these things, because we could just send a code, and the person it's a one-time code. They use that, they get in, it authenticates. Then we have their information for the Kepler wallets, for the NFT. We have everything we need. And then it's kind of, this year's one of the coolest things is like building this Web3 judging platform and then kind of watching the progress on that and seeing how that's working. And it's pretty cool because it's all, after the event, if anyone has any gripes or issue with the judging, you can take it and publish everything and say, hey, here's all the judging that this is how this won and this is how that won.
Oh,
so
that's
it's kind of cool.
That's super
really
cool. I think that transparency is like super important.
Yeah, it's dope. And it's like the fact that the makers are the judges also takes away, a whole bunch of shenanigans and bullshit. There's never going to be like a bunch of makers are going to get together and cheat for one maker. It's like, no, it doesn't work like that. It's always going to be honest in that sense. So yeah, there's some cool stuff. And that's a nod to Ego Clash because that's something that they've always done. So there's different things that we've kind of come out with that were out of feedback from, things that we didn't have last year. But there's, nods in different directions to different events that we've been to, things that work. But
no, I'm super excited, man. I'm honored to be able to be a feeder event for, the next Moth. The winners of that Moth get invited to the next Legends. And I think that having these tiered events that, we can have a lot of, and everybody can throw different events with different styles, and they can kind of fall into, regional versus, statewide, and we can really develop a system where it's friendly competition, where it's not, oh, that person is better than that person. It was that person was better than that person on that day. It was like, it's any given day, and what crops and what plants you have access to.
Yeah, baby.
I think those things are really important too, like different levels of events, because I mean, a lot of us are some of us are more fortunate than others. You know what I mean? Some of us can afford to do like a long schlep in California and go to like multiple events, but some of us can only afford to do like a one-day event.
1 or 2.
And I think it's really important that people are not excluded. I think that it's really important for inclusivity. I think it's really important to throw events that everyone can attend and that there are lower barriers to entry, because something that we need to acknowledge as all of us event throwers is that, a lot of times there are barriers to entry. So having like different levels of events is really important so people, can advance through the culture. You never know. Like someone who enters a very low,
like that was me, like when I was in LA, dude, like, and I was trying to go to these things, like I was like scraping money together to just to go, like, meet people making stuff and try new things and see like what was good, it's.
So it gives people an opportunity to kind of evolve and grow. So I think it's really important. It's cool.
Yeah, that's what we're stoked about the brunch, because then you can have people that really, the 2-day ticket is definitely more expensive at Legends. It is 2 days. It's all catered food. It's a bunch of stuff like that. But, the having 2 different options, a 1-day and a 2-day, makes a big difference, I think. Because
absolutely.
Sure. It's nice having the options.
It's nice to have options.
Yep.
So
I mean, but I mean, Legends is invite only.
It's cool to have things for people to aspire to, like people are looking at that and they're like, fuck, I want to get there someday. My only feasible way to get there is if I start here and then I try to go to Moth and I enter the competition at Moth and then maybe I win at Moth. It's like a cool ladder to the top.
Yeah, you know what? I think to answer your question from before about the actual makers, like the list is done. I mean, we could talk about the list, and I was just thinking that I think it's Q and Pacific Northwest Roots and Mission Hill Melts. Yeah, that's Legends has like a couple people from Melting in the Heads.
Yeah.
Represent.
Yeah, that's very cool. So I mean, you don't have to. The first place guarantees you, but even if you medal at these things, you're being scouted, and I think that's where it's going to go. Like I think that you have a lot of different tiers of competition, so that the ones that are invite only don't necessarily get criticized, because there's a number of different ways to get in. It's like, hey, you can't criticize me if there's all these different ways. If you're hungry enough to kind of get your ticket to come in. So I think that seeing more competitions in different states at different levels is just like something I'm super stoked to promote in any way I can. I wanted to ask Mission Hill, the market in general in North America, Canada, California, Washington, Colorado is in a tough position. Worse than it's arguably ever been. I'd say not even arguably. What are your thoughts on what's going to happen over the next 3 years? Like, do you feel as though it's going to get worse before it gets better, or do you feel as though we're pretty much at bottom and things are about to start improving?
I think the bottom might have been last season, because I don't know about California.
For us, at least.
It's been like uncharacteristically busy, not on just the processing end, which obviously we're busy because it's the season, but like
the sales end.
On the sales end, like we've had lots of people hitting us up. Our growers, everyone we work with is small batch and pretty much mainly deals with direct to patients unless they have their own sort of storefront. And our small batch, growers have been telling us that they've been getting hit up by tons of storefronts wanting to carry product, which like is uncharacteristic, because this time last season you would have to try to go grovel with storefronts for them to even put your product on the shelves.
And they'd want to like spit on you and then be like, that's your payment.
Yeah, they
don't want to give you any money for it.
Season, which rubbed everybody the wrong way.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people quietly bowed out, at least in our area.
It feels like it.
I just don't see the variety. I just don't see as much stuff coming out right
now.
Well,
people blew up, right? When the economy was like really nice and people were getting all of these like funny money checks and shit like that. And people took advantage of that situation, and a lot of people expanded, and then the market kind of crashed. And so people have been slowly just shutting rooms off because it's just not feasible.
I think it's also like
to keep running them.
I think it's also like how well like people have been able to adapt. Like, I think a lot of people, especially in the weed game, like have a ton of pride, and like people have been getting like $3,200 a pound for their whole life when shit gets really low, and you gotta make some price cuts if you want to sell some stuff, and they don't want to do that. It's like it's tough. Like you have to at some point be able to like work with the market. Like you gotta realize that $100 grams aren't sustainable, like sometimes they are, but like if you think you're going to be selling $100 grams your whole life, like,
you're not selling $100 gram of GMO. That's for sure.
Yeah.
You have to have something really fucking special if you're planning on charging $100 for it in this market. So that's kind of the situation.
Dive into that. Like, what advice do you have for individuals who are following in your footsteps, either in the medical or legacy spaces, in their respective states or markets, trying to build their brands? What advice do you have for them right now?
If you're trying to do it to put food on your table, then at some point you've got to treat it like a business, and that means trying to separate emotions and like do whatever is best for the business, which is not always the easiest thing to do. I think for us, it was really just like we have sort of like our values and like our goals, and like, we'd really try to, everything we do, we try to do that with those in mind. Quality is always our top priority, like keeping the batch sizes small. Like you'll never see us dropping tons and tons and tons of like one thing, like we're starting to label like how big our batch sizes are, because I think people like to see that, especially when people like, some people don't realize like how small like a batch is. Like most of the stuff that we've run like has been like anywhere between like 40 to 100 something grams. Like a lot of the things are
like this is Jumanji Breath by our buddy Aloha Apothecary, and this is one of 95 grams.
Yeah, so
there's not a lot. It's not a lot of it.
What other advice do we have for? I mean, it's a tough time. Like
it's tough. Exclusivity is really important.
Yeah, I would say trying to build a good network. As a new brand, like find a good supply chain. Like find a good find some people to work with, and like it might be tough in the beginning, but like if I were to start right now, I would probably, the first run of stuff that we would do, I probably wouldn't even like end up selling. I'd probably end up sending like really nice curated packages to like big hitters in the industry and like hope that you just like, I think that's like, you gotta think of that as like an investment in marketing and not you just like giving away a bunch of product, like, because I feel like that's what'll turn heads. Like if you come out swinging and you send them a nice curated thing and they're like, damn, who the fuck is this? Like,
yeah,
but just like, do the work. It sucks. It's not making hash isn't easy. It's not like, it's cold, it's wet, things are heavy, like things are sticky, things go wrong.
Do you think that there's a place for people in the industry that don't have a relationship with the plant?
I mean, yeah, because I think in any industry, like you don't necessarily need to enjoy it to like, like contribute. Like, does my accountant need to smoke hash to like be a good like hash accountant? Like, not really, but I do think it's hard. Like, like how can someone who doesn't partake in what I make love it as much as I do? Like, I find that hard to.
It's really tough.
I think they could probably make better objective decisions than I can, but I don't think they love the fucking. Because I mean, at the end of the day, we make hash because we love hash and we smoke too much of it to ever purchase it ourselves. So we've got to keep making it if we want to stay on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I think that's a great answer. I want to like switch gears a little bit and move towards a few like final rapid fire questions. You see a lot of material. So 5 most impressive cultivars that have come through your wash bin in the last, 3 to 5 months.
Strawberry cannoli.
3 to 5 months. Yeah, I gotta think all the way back. It's strawberry cannoli, the macadamia cake, which was a mixed pheno wash of tea
and shout the farmers out as you.
Shout out to
Aloha Apothecary. We love
fam.
him. He crushes it. Every single round of material from him is fucking fire. It's beautiful. It's crazy on the terps. He crushes it. He's the kind of person where if you give him advice on like, I really think this kind of genetics are really going to yield for hash, he'll take that advice to heart. He will purchase those genetics. He bought a ton of teas gear, hunted through a bunch of it. So like the macadamia cake was like a mixed
wash. It was a peanut butter cream pie mixed with the gassy
feet. No.
I don't even remember. It was fantastic. John Stockton.
Yes.
Yeah. What else have we watched that's been spectacular? The real question is, what have we watched that we then smoked the majority of? Shout out to our homie Brian, who is going through a rebranding right now, so he doesn't have a company, but that's the old Ed homie from who's in Vermont these days. But he's still doing some good work, dude. His sour diesel. If you ever get it, his GMO from us, that means we love you because I'm smoking that shit.
We don't tell that to people. We smoke it all. We process it and we put it in a jar and then we put some of it in our deep freezer for like a magical day when we remember that it's there or stumble across it, and then we smoke the rest of it.
Gosh, I'm trying to think. 6 months is a hard timeline because we've watched so much material in that. More recently, though, our man Cold River Cultivation has grown some excellent outdoors.
Oh, the guava icy is
guava
crazy.
Icy is super unique. It's very much like a super refreshing, like I don't even know. It's guava terps, but it's like I don't know. It really.
I get like vibe. It's like guava terps, but I get movie theater slushy.
Yeah, exactly.
If that makes any sense.
The watermelon Skittles that I mentioned earlier too, that yielded pretty nicely for outdoor. Super sandy heads, which I was surprised at.
Yeah, man. Anything that Aloha grows, it just is fucking crazy, and it's really, really good. Hey, all the dogs need to.
Dope. What, Adam? What's one or Hana? What's one like tool that is super underrated that you use every day in your lab?
I mean, shit, the tool that like besides the hashtag, which is like the machine, but it specific like smaller scale, we paid good money for a nice shallow well jet pump for as our water sprayer motor. Before that, if you can believe it, we were doing the fucking hand pump sprayers, which was a nightmare. And then we spent we got kind of like shitty pumps, and then we got a really nice, I think it's a half horsepower. It's a Lanchez brand, but holy shit, that thing moves water. And like, you know, anyone who makes hash knows that foam is usually like a really annoying thing that you deal with eventually when you're washing, and trying to like spray that foam down can be really difficult. When you got that high pressure and the fucking flat setting, dude, that foam just is no problem. So that thing has made our life easy, and that's pretty affordable to most people, unlike the hashtag, which is like the cost of a new car. So
my general advice is just mise en place. Like, it's so important to get your shit together before you start so that you're not scrambling afterwards.
Yeah, and that's like, I'm on Reddit sometimes, and when I'm feeling bad about myself, I'll go to our bubble hash to just like remind myself that we're doing okay, you know? Because people just like start making hash with no plan, and it just blows my mind. You throw material in water, and then you're like, oh shit, like, all right, well,
now what?
How am I gonna? People have wet hash, and they're like, how do I dry this? And it's like, bro, you didn't do the research before you started going. But even on like a small scale, dude, like spending a little bit of extra time just to set yourself up. So like, I'm not washing today, but I'm going to do some cold room feng shui tonight. I'm going to do a deep clean. I'm going to clean all of our freeze dryer trays. I'm going to line everything with parchment. Just like staying on top of your stuff is so much more. It's so much easier than trying to let a bunch of shit pile up and then do it after. Like, definitely stay ahead of your shit.
If you had to pick just one, Adam, what would be, your proudest cannabis achievement in the last, in the last 5 to 7 years?
Proudest? You know what? It's between two. I think the first one that I thought of originally that we talked about earlier was when we won a local competition. We came in first and second place at the Commonwealth Cup, and the what we won first place with was our single source sour diesel that came from our no-till garden. So that was nice because that was like we were defending champions. So I really wanted to win, and then to come back to back was like,
and to win on the single source.
Yeah, it was a real Drake moment right there. So that was I was floating then, but then getting the first invite to Ego Clash I forgot like how hyped I was, because I was hoping that we'd get the invite, and then I saw other people flexing that they got invited, and I remember I was like home for the holidays, I think, or home for Thanksgiving or something. Yeah. And I was pretty much resigned, like, all right, like, I'm just going to grind hard. We're going to make tons of fire hash, and like, we'll get an invite next year. And I was literally in my buddy's basement just like drinking beer or something. And I saw the banner where it was like, Third Gen Family has sent you a message. And I'm like, no, could it be? And it was funny because none of my friends like could really understand how exciting that was. But I was literally like yelling.
Those are two really good.
They weren't too like far behind each other too, though, because the first one was nice because that's like getting recognized like locally, and then getting invited to the Ego Clash in 2019 was like nice because that's like, okay, cool, like other people who aren't just in our like general vicinity, which is tight. So because we got love, we got Matt, we got a lot of homies on the West Coast, dude. Everyone's got fire turfs. Try to stay connected with everyone. Shouts out to the Midwest too. Michigan got some good flavors coming out if you know where to look.
Absolutely, man. Michigan had some unbelievable solventless when I was last there.
Pretty much everywhere you go got some good flavors if you know where to look. It just some places are harder than others.
Absolutely. So what do you have as far as plans going forward, like, you know, personally or professionally, that for the next few months? I know you're headed to Legends. What else is going on?
And the Legends, dude, I think we're going to turn that into a nice little vacation, which we're kind of excited about because we've never really gone on. Any trip we've gone on has been 3 days, and 2 of those days are usually traveling. So it's not really like we've gotten to relax and enjoy ourselves, but we're going to do a little Legends, and then, you know, hopefully we'll get invited back to Ego Clash, but if not, we'll just go hang out in fucking NorCal. But do a nice, like, probably like hopefully like 10 days in California is the goal.
It's gonna be the longest we've ever taken off of work ever.
I'm terrified.
By far.
I don't even fucking know what I'm gonna do.
Yeah.
But so that'll be cool.
Melting of the Heads, New York. I'm so excited.
Yeah, we've been diligently working, getting the food ready, getting the scheduling ready, getting everything tied up. So we're really excited about that. Anybody who comes to that has a high possibility of meeting my father. So that's a cool flex.
Yeah.
Come out and meet Papa Melts.
Dude, he's so cool.
I'm very excited. I'm very excited to meet Papa Mission Hill Melts.
Yeah, the trap runs in the family. So
Mission Hill Melts Senior.
We're planning our wedding currently, which is pretty lit.
The headiest event of the year. Invite only.
That's the most coveted weed event of the year, dude. Yeah.
Can't even buy a ticket to that.
That one I'm excited for. That was big congratulations go out to you too. I know that was recent. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's about it, dude. I don't know. That's about it. We've been caught behind this mountain of material that we're trying to make our way through. It's a little intimidating, but, you know, just taking everything one day at a time.
Absolutely. 100%, man. I think you're doing a really good job. I think it's super important, you know, how visible you're being in the community and like what you're doing with the Discord and the promotion of the amount of information that you give out just on that Discord alone. I mean, if Brad's and Chad's could infiltrate it, they'd be able to make, you know, a good living and a half off that. And I think that, you know, it speaks to your character and what you guys are about. And so I'm really stoked to be able to call you guys friends. I wanted to give you this kind of opportunity for any shout outs for any individuals that kind of helped you along the way. I know you've had a long storied past and I wanted to give you this opportunity. So here it is.
Wow. Let's see who we got.
Go for it.
Shouts out to our my man, Aloha and Elm. They've been like our most consistent indoor growers for the past like year and a half.
And they've become dear friends. So we really love them.
Big up to them.
Shout out to both of them.
Cold River Cultivation, killing it. Our homie Mr. Alari on Instagram, killing it.
Yep.
Skunkfoot Farms, High Road 207.
Shout out to Broccoli Rob. We love you.
Rob, dude. Think Higher Cultivation.
Shout out to Jacob.
Shout out to my man Jacob.
Jacob has been with Adam since the start. He was there like the
it's
first
actually
time.
The first time I ever squished bubble hash like properly, like with the screen. My buddy was there, so we're gonna be splitting a grow with him in the not too distant future. So
huge shout out to him.
Single source Mission Hill Melts on the horizon for those people out there.
Mm-hmm. Shout out to your parents.
My parents. Shout out to our boy Brian, the OG homie, still growing Sour D and Deadhead, dude, absolutely fucking killing it.
That guy.
I'm trying to think who else am I missing?
That guy.
That guy.
Dude, that guy. Dude, let me tell you, if Deadhead OG. I'm sorry, going back to that top 5 resins we've tried in the last 6 months, bro. That Deadhead, not a yielder, you know, good biomass yielder, kind of like a so-so.
It was one of my favorite BHOs. Was Deadhead.
Dude,
bro, I'd smoke the shit out of that every day if I could.
Beautiful. Love that shit. Anything that Brian does is really nice.
Anything, dude. I'm trying to think of who else I'm forgetting about. Yo, shouts out to Rosin Evolution. I actually got a picture in this
They'll be at Legends.
photo of me repping them during the flower rosin days, so you know it's real. flex that one time for the people.
Oh my God, that's so
Let 'em
funny.
know. November 11th, 2016 for the people, baby. You already know. Fuck with your boy. They are really the best bags in the game, though. I mean, we've always repped the set. Shouts out to Micron Extracts. Shouts out to Hashtag.
Shouts out to you, Jameson.
Yeah, truly. Shouts out to you, Jamo, Terpova, the man. Do we appreciate you guys having us on? We're sorry we had to bail that one time, but it was a fucking really hectic, like, what was it, 6-month period, basically?
Yeah, life sucked.
Hana was pretty much driving, like, no less than, like, 40 to 60 hours a week for, like, a 4-month stretch, and then had to stay with her mom for a few weeks studded throughout. It was tough.
We made it.
We made it.
We're going to Legends.
I put a ring on it so she doesn't have to worry about me leaving or her
We're
leaving.
here.
That's the real thing.
It's exciting.
Well, that's awesome, man. I appreciate you guys coming on. Where's the best place to get in touch with you? I know you've got your Discord. Where's the best place to find out about that?
Yeah, so if you go to our Instagram, mission.hill.melts, we have a link tree in our bio. That pretty much will have all of the links to any sort of major social media.
We just revamped our website.
We got a new website. We're still tweaking a little bit, but for the most part, she's there. We got to do some moth updates soon on there, but definitely poke around there. We got like a mailing list. We're going to be opening a direct-to-patient portal for the card-holding patients of pretty much everywhere. If you have a legal medical card and you can make your way up to Maine, we can see you directly, which is kind of cool.
That's cool.
You'll be able to place orders through our website through that. We've got some merch drops coming. We're going to have some moth exclusive merch drops, which will be pretty dope. But yeah, the link tree through our Instagram is probably the easiest way. missionhillmelts.com, which is sick to say because we had a fight for our domain for 4 years, which sucked.
Wow.
Congratulations.
That's a good one.
That's a good one.
Here's our closing advice. If you're a new company, don't do anything until you trademark your shit and buy your domain, because motherfuckers will fuck with you just out of spite. So get all your legal ducks in a row before you spend any money on branding or packaging or any of those things. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get that paperwork. Frame that shit.
Good advice.
Sound advice. Well, Adam, Hana, thank you again so much for taking the time. We appreciate you, and we'll definitely have to have you on again soon.
Oh, yeah, man.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll be back again soon. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.